This is Mike Norman, and
Hi, Mike.
hi Theo.
My name is Theowarner.
And my name is Mike Context.
Theo, you're really good at sort of driving these things, so drive.
All right.
Huh?
Well, this video, I think, this conversation really comes on the heels of, the conversation that we've been having, my context and I, and Mike and I actually as well, for a while now, has been about this character, Billsy Bob, whose channel is now
Generic God, Space Killer.
And his sort of relationship with me and his refusal, such as evidenced by his absence here today, to talk about things, and his rather odd relationship to me, which now has culminated in a 27-minute video in which he launches into a somewhat incoherent attack on me that I sort of tried to figure out but stopped paying attention to at some point.
I think I can help clear up some things, possibly.
All right.
And it kind of goes back to the arguments that he's put forth that seems not to be understood. And I grant that he has presented a rather ugly interpretation, but the interpretation itself is not the point.
For a second. You have interpretation of what?
Of the Bible.
Okay.
And I understand there are a multitude of possible interpretations. For the most part, everybody accepts that interpretation is okay. However...
Well, I mean, except for Billsy Bob, right?
Actually, he understands the interpretation. It's not the interpretation that is the issue in and of itself.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm actually pretty sure that it is the interpretation. I mean, he has said explicitly that interpretation is not allowed. Sure.
Because there's more that goes with the interpretation problem. Interpretation is perfectly fine if there is no base by which you can claim it correct. Which case becomes a matter of opinion as to what it says, because you have no authoritative base by which to claim any particular interpretation correct.
Now, I have to say, you use the word base, and I don't know quite what you mean when you use the word base.
Okay, then I'll give an example. If I was an author, and I presented a story, and I said what my story was in reference to, it doesn't really matter what anyone's interpretation of my story is. I'm the authority of my story. Am I not?
Well,
no, you're not.
Authorial intent is, yeah. I mean, this is not a new thing.
Yeah, that is a fundamental truism of literary criticism, which is that there is a place in interpretation for respecting authorial intent, and there's a place in interpretation for abandoning authorial intent. Both create entirely legitimate readings. So I say no, I disagree. The fact that you're the author has nothing to do with whether or not somebody else's interpretation is valid or not.
So you're saying that somebody else can claim what I intended?
No, because interpretation is not limited.
Hold on. And that's my point right there, and that is his point. You cannot claim any interpretation as being equally valid if I am the authority of what was intended.
Sure you can. Yeah, but you just restated the problem, and you restated the problem without actually listening to the answer. Yeah, absolutely. When regardless of if you write a poem, let's say you write a poem, right? Mm-hmm. And you say it's about tragedy, the tragedy of World War II, and I read it and say, well, I think it's about divorce. Well, who's right and who's wrong?
Well, with regard regard to what the intent of the writing is, I'd be right.
I'm asking you
but with
what
regard
intent
to
is. Hold on a second.
regard to what possible intent.
No, you were confusing the issue. When you say with regards to what the intent is, you put down the question. The question was about interpretation.
I'm clarifying what I mean when I say that.
Okay.
There are two aspects to this. One aspect is, as the author, I can tell you why I wrote the text, what it was intended to be from my perspective.
Sure.
I understand how any individual may interpret it to be something different.
Sure.
That's not in dispute to me.
Okay.
But
so let's understand that there are many interpretations.
Understood.
Well, not just this. This is a very
That's not in dispute here. What is in dispute is the validity of alternate interpretations when in fact there should supposedly be a base.
What? Wait. What are you talking about? When
Okay. In this case, the notion of a God is determined to be the base. This is what he's referring to as a base. He refers to as a God.
That would be something like authorial intent, right?
It is authoritarian, yes.
But we've just established that there exists valid interpretations outside authorial intent.
That are secondary to the authoritarian intent.
No.
Secondary. They are co-primary.
Okay.
Well, and not just that, but I mean, like, an author can be sort of like hooked into and influenced by things that the author does not understand, and that those things sneak into their meaning, sneak into the writing and can be sort of exposed through interpretation, oftentimes in spite of authorial intent.
I'm with you. I have no objection to that, except when you make the claim that and I'm using the generic claim of a God, omniscient, let's just go with perfect.
Well, no. Please, let's not. Let's do one thing at a time, because, I mean, let's.
Well, what I'm getting at is all of these are interconnected to his argument. And to disconnect it is to miss the point of what he's claiming.
All right, well, as long as we're going to sort of, I guess, move on like this, I mean, I don't think any of this really has anything to do with anything that Beelzebub actually says.
What I'm saying is, if you say that anybody's interpretation is valid, then the extreme interpretation that he presents as a definition of Christianity becomes one of many interpretations possible.
Right, and so, see, nobody is saying that all interpretations are equally valid. That's
not claiming that either. But the moment you say that there's no way to really say any particular interpretation is valid,
which nobody is saying. In fact, I'm saying there are bad interpretations.
I will grant that there are bad interpretations. The fact that we have no interpretation that can be claimed the interpretation is the point that he is making, nothing more.
No, it's not, for one. And two, I mean, I'm so lost already because, I mean, we've gone from, like, authorial intent to, there is a sort of hint at this, omniscience and omnipotence argument, and then on and on and on.
They're all interconnected.
No,
you cannot disconnect them as if they were, because the moment you say that the author is omniscient, all-knowing, and so forth, the number of interpretations that should be in place should dwindle.
So, but if you're going to say that,
hold on.
that the author is omniscient, then you're already engaging in an interpretive act, and there's this very strange loop that you're in.
There's a bunch of things in the backdrop that go with that. So let me step back so that you can understand the backdrop. Because from my standpoint, the fact that there is any confusion is in fact evidence that it's garbage. From my standpoint.
Which is garbage?
The Bible.
Oh, right. And this is that, like, really, this is that thing where, like, where where you reduce all of God to like these two things, right? Omnipotence and this only want, that this one overriding want, which is to be understood. And then you say, ta-da, because there's any confusion, then this particular God, which is the only God, does not exist. And I don't even know a human being who has one overriding want that determines all of their actions.
Yeah, it's called the fallacy of oversimplification.
I'm not arguing the various notions about what could be and how people may or may not feel about it. I'm getting to the point of what the issue and points of disconnect are. Now, if you're telling me, and this is a real key point, whenever a claim is made, whatever the claim is, most of us start to have certain expectations on the basis of the claims that are made. And if the claims are not fulfilled, then it suggests that the claim is false. Now, if you can give me a claim that a person can see as being active and true, then that would affirm there's something to be claimed.
Hold on a second.
There are claims in the open with no way of validation, no validity that can be claimed. It's just
what you're trying to do is somehow sketch some sort of mechanics of coming to truth, or some sort of mechanics of the way propositions work. But when you
actually no. I'm not doing anything that formal.
Okay.
I'm doing something rather pedestrian, and that is looking at how people actually feel and react to information.
But so I mean that
expectations and individuals' expectations. I'm not saying that these expectations are in any way correct or not. I'm saying how we feel as a general notion.
So no, there are too many pronouns and too many references here, and it's too abstract. I mean, like.
Okay.
To give an example of like one sort of thing that sprang to mind is, I went to school to become an aerospace engineer, and I know a lot about fluid mechanics, and I can tell you, and I can make claims about fluid mechanics that you would just instinctively say are just wrong, but what that means is, in some respect, you're ignorant concerning fluid mechanics. And I mean,
exactly.
We wouldn't even. But I mean, I wouldn't even be concerned about your opinion of fluid mechanics, and it's not even worth discussing, no matter how sort of, at length I go on about it, or sort of how ornate my language is.
I'm with you, except Mike, there's a difference between the discussion of fluid mechanics and the various claims of God. There is a basis by which I can come to understand the dynamics of fluid mechanics. I can actually learn that, and we can actually come to an accord on that point. We have a firm foundation by which to review it, do we not?
Well, sure.
But when we have a claim that's an open claim with no way of validating it, it leaves all kinds of things open.
Well, what's an open claim? What's this terminology?
When I say open claim, it is a claim wherein it's said there's no way to say that it's not categorically true, and yet there's no way to affirm it. So the only thing that we wind up doing is playing with the outskirts of the nature of the claim and the intersections of that claim with what we understand to be reality.
Now, are you sure that's what you mean when you say open claim?
That is what I mean when I say open claim. That it's something.
I think you mean claim, because that's what a claim is. A claim is just something that hasn't yet. It's a claim is just.
I'm making a special stressing on this as being something that is not intertangled with reality as we know it.
Right. Now, I mean, you're saying a remarkable amount about God. You're saying that God is not intertangled with with reality as we know it?
As I understand, unless you can show me something that says that it is, I'm left with a notion that you're presenting, and I'm working within the confines of whatever you're claiming to make some kind of abstraction that may or may not exist. But I have no basis to claim such exists.
That's fine. I mean, what you're saying is that you just are an agnostic towards this claim.
Understood, but it goes further.
Hold a second. That's really all you're saying. I mean, you're not really saying. I mean, you've said a lot of words, but all you're just saying is, I don't get it, and that's fine.
Actually, I'm going one step further. Not only do I not get it, I see no validity in the claim.
Hold on, wait. So, just as a favor to me, when we say the claim, actually, could we not say the claim if we're talking about a specific claim? Let's actually replace the claim with the thing that you.
There's a problem with that, though. If I say, I'm going to say the claim of God. How's that? If I say claim of God, but when I say claim of God, it is not a singular claim of God, because as we know, there's a multitude of claims. So if you'd like me to narrow it down to a specific one, I need you to present what you're talking about. Give me a conceptual notion that you wish to review. Because the notion God is such an amorphous notion that there is nothing to be claimed tangibly. It's like it's the most... It's just like talking about nothing, literally.
Right, but you see my context. This is one of the reasons why Billy Bob's videos are so problematic, is because you're right in a certain sense that it's very hard when discussing God to contend with an absence of an interlocutor, somebody on the other side of the table. Billy Bob has invented somebody on the other side of the table for him to play chess with. The problem is that the person on the other side of the table, in Billy Bob's mind, is an idiot and a raving moron. And not only that, but horrible. I mean, one of the worst human beings imaginable. And so Billy Bob's entire discourse, sounds fairly reasonable because, on some level, because the person he's talking to is a deeply evil person. But my point is, that person doesn't exist. Now, I don't say that.
If we are looking at a context...
You let me finish. I'm
sorry.
But the thing is that he then imports from this conversation with this horrible person some notion about all religious people, and he somehow included me and at various times Mike and Big Lundy and Cardinal Virtues and some other people, bizarrely. And for some reason has included you, even though you have consistently placed yourself inside, agreeing with me about most of the comments I make about Billy Bob. And I think that the way he imports his analysis of this disgusting human being onto these other people who are all fairly reasonable people is a deeply troubling maneuver, and one that I think belies a sort of crazy misunderstanding about things. But my point, sir, is that nowhere in any of that do I have to begin with some description about the nature of God, or, as you like to put it, the claim.
Okay, then let's take a look at it again from a totally different perspective. You are told that there is a God.
Okay.
You're told that the Bible is a reference to this entity.
That's because I have to immediately object.
Why?
It tells me that there is a God. And what is a God? I mean, you're...
All right, let's get rid of some of the abstractions then.
Okay.
Theo, do you accept the idea that there is a God or not? So we have something substantive to work with right now.
You'd have to tell me what you mean by God.
I'm asking for your concept if you have one. Because I don't have one. All I have is claims.
What?
Yeah. What I would say is that the word God is useful in the sense that it describes certain
I'm not asking about a word. Are you claiming for existence or not? I need to hear whether you are for existence or not. Because I want to get to something substantive. Mike is right. I do a lot of abstraction because I don't see anything. All I hear is concepts. So I speak of it as purely concept. So I
No.
need to have an interlocutor so we can get to a clear point.
Well, then it's just not going to be me because I don't know how to answer that question. I think
Mike,
the question is,
Yeah. What?
Are you? Do you have a notion of a God?
Well, I mean, do I have a notion of it? I'm not sure.
Yes.
What,
Are you claiming a God existent that you have a firm notion of in some fashion?
I haven't made such a claim. Now, whether or not
such a claim.
by the way,
what's that?
Do you actually believe in a God of some sort?
Hold on. Oh, what were you going to say, Theo?
I just wanted to say, nor have I.
Right.
You said,
Yes.
Okay, I'm saying, do you believe in a God of some sort?
So, I mean, I don't know how to answer that question definitively. Provisionally, I would say I don't. I probably don't think that there's, an underlying sort of unified intelligence that made the universe, but I don't know that that's more absurd than saying that there is.
My comment is simply that we don't get to declare anything is without a basis. So we can imagine all kinds of things, but to declare that it is a non sequitur.
So, and that statement is completely symmetric in the respect that we can't claim that anything is not.
True,
Without
but
some kind
you
of...
don't act on or should push the idea of something that we can't claim is as if it were.
Well, I don't know where you're getting. I mean,
God are presented as if it is, opposed to.
we're in left field again.
You're flying at these incredible paces and making all these outlandish statements. And
What's outlandish in my commentary?
because most of what you're saying is very hard to follow because you keep using pronouns so carelessly that I've lost the point of what you were saying.
And
My first question to you, either one of you, is: are you claiming the existence of a God?
I will say no.
and
Mike, are you claiming the existence of a God?
what I'll say is what I said to you before is tentatively right now I don't think that I am, but I'm also not sure if it's more absurd to say that there isn't than it is to say that there is. I'm saying that I don't know enough about the universe. I mean,
I'm there. So basically, there is no. Within the construct of what you're claiming, you cannot claim there is as an affirmative at the moment.
right.
Okay.
I would say that too because I think that the word claim means something. I don't think it's just. I think that the word claim carries with it epistemological duties and certain confidences about the world and about reality. None of which I think I really am prepared to impose upon myself. So yeah, the word. When you ask the question, do you claim a God or the existence of a God or something like that? I think that you're in certain ways you're not actually asking what you think you're asking. I said no.
Notice I'm speaking about this in a pedestrian fashion. I'm trying to avoid the philosophical banter on it.
Okay.
To the degree possible.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know why you say that like it's venerable.
Because there's a certain
abstract and philosophical concept. I'm not sure why the average pedestrian somehow has access to it in a way that somebody.
So,
I don't want to
yeah.
I mean, somebody,
there's a lot of use of language when you start talking about epistemology is not something that the average person is thinking about. They have a notion of a meaning and they go with that notion. And the moment one decides to stretch it out, it amounts to a form of sophistry against the regular person.
And I don't know, and I just kind of want to halt here because what I want to point to is just the strangeness of the phrase. I mean, one phrase among many that you used. You said the moment one tries to stretch it out. Like I mean, I don't know. It's not that you've strayed into philosophical grounds when you said to stretch it out. It's that you strayed into this area that like it's not even comprehensible. I mean, what are you talking about? I mean, that's what we're trying to get away from, not from like actual abstractions about actual things, but like abstractions that don't work or abstractions that don't refer to anything or just when just the words go wrong, and it's like, I don't know what you're even saying anymore. I mean, that's what I'm trying to get away from.
In what Theo just did, he was talking about the epistemology of the word claim.
No, I wasn't saying that the word...
You suggested that the word claim has certain epistemological... I can't even say the word. But it has certain responsibilities associated with that word. Correct? Yes. Okay. And the responsibilities that you're speaking to is not, or would you contradict me on this, something that the average person is thinking about in the forefront of their mind.
I'm not going to contradict you, but I have to say I also don't care. I'm not going to sit I'm going to organize my mind based on the average person.
I'm not asking all that, but I'm asking to bring it down to that point so that a conversation can be had without a detailed analysis required, unless there is a point of actual confusion.
So I think what my context is trying to say is that YouTube atheists are stupid.
Yeah, this is a very strange place to hang your hat, sir. You're really... I'm
not making that claim. I am working to make sure that everybody is on page with it, and it doesn't protract the conversation with the detailed analysis of every word with a long lineage associated with every word, unless such clarification is necessary to achieve and understand a particular point.
Yeah. Well, I have to say that every time I suggest that there is a meaning that is relevant within a word, and that there's a distinction to be drawn, I think that the best thing to do is to say, okay, well, what is that? And then listen to it and respect the distinction I've drawn, because to do otherwise is to fail to communicate. I mean, I am loath to say it, but this is the nature of thinking, is when you say that the words we use are not sufficient, that we need to reorganize our words, use our words differently, because the ideas that we have come to at this point in history are not, there are new ideas that are not being captured in words. We need to come up with other ways to think about things. I don't see what's so...
hold on. I'll go ahead and make it a little more concise. I'll get to the point. We can have a conversation, and you can make note of the possibility that a given word may have a meaning ascribed to it that you do not intend. But it has not come to be that it has surfaced as yet, right?
That it has what?
Has come to pass that there's confusion. Like, we can have a conversation, and it seems like we're on point. And only when we get to a certain point would it come to be that there's a problem. And at that point, we can get clarification of the problem, as opposed to attempting to head off every problem that could possibly be.
So what you're saying is that while I may be aware of a confusion, I should not mention it until you are aware of it.
Until there's actually something there that I can actually focus on in the conversation. Otherwise, it becomes this meandering, lengthy thing because of all the layering that we're doing on the words prior to there being a necessary redress to that
meandering, lengthy thing on the words is what thinking is.
I'm not arguing that, but when you're trying to have a conversation, it is a major sideline to that conversation.
No, it's what the conversation is. If we didn't stop what they're thinking about, we would just sort of say a few things and say thanks for the conversation. It'd take 3 minutes.
Yeah. So, we have
to stop on the words authorial intent, the word interpretation, the word claim, and we haven't even gotten anywhere yet.
And that's my point. We can actually nitpick on the words until we get to the notion, when we get to the totality of what the person's meaning, then we can actually address and uncompact it if it's a problem.
I'm much more okay with nitpicking the meanings of words than I am with nitpicking the nitpicking of meanings of words. And for once, I did not stutter.
Fair enough.
I think we have to stop and talk about what words mean, because that's where the confusion exists.
Yeah. So for example, like, I mean, when you, I mean, one, it's suspect that you think it makes a difference whether or not anyone in this conversation actually makes the claim that there is a God. But
well, what does that matter anyway?
Actually, the reason that I ask that is so that there would be a substantive claim to interact with.
Oh, see,
what I'm making is
right, and I think I'm just going to really talk about. I think this is kind of the heart of the matter. I mean, I don't think that. I mean, there's a popular notion of what thinking is in sort of the YouTube theist and atheist community, such as it is, and it's just as present in the apologists for Christianity as it is in the sort of most rabid anti-theist. And the proposition is this: that what thinking is making propositions and determining their truth value, right? Like, you can just look them up in a table, and if we could just get a syllogism complex enough, then we'd have the whole thing solved. And that's not what thinking is. Thinking is it's more about asking questions. It's more about finding relationships between ideas. It's much more about finding the surprising things than finding the expected things.
From my standpoint, the former as well as the latter of what you said is actually all part of thinking, and then some. I don't constrain it to just that.
Let me go back to something that Mike said a second ago, which I thought was exactly right, and that is that you for some reason, my context, have required this conversation to involve a theistic affirmation about the existence of God. I don't understand why three people have to sit around. I mean, from what I can tell, my interest in this conversation is that there is a man out there named Beelzebub who has now made 12, 13, 14 videos attacking me and lumping in a lot of other people. And I think that his contribution to the world is extraordinarily negative. And it's something that I'm concerned that you are not concerned about. And that's what I'm talking about. I don't see why, in order to make that comment, and I ask you, why in the world are you not appalled by this person? I have to declare the existence of God or deny the existence of God in that incredibly.
I'll go ahead and ask another. I'll address it another way. Have you seen the Milgram experiments?
No.
Yeah, Theo. It's the those experiments in the 60s and 70s concerning how people respond to authority.
Oh, and the pressing the buzzer thing?
Pressing the buzzer and the I think he also did the pretend sort of jail and guards scenario that sort of went off the rails.
Yeah. Okay, so yes, I do.
Okay. At this moment, those notions are particularly salient to our conversation.
Which notions?
The notions of authority as presented by those two psychological experiments.
Okay.
How?
Yes, I'd like to know that too. Because frankly, it seems like you're the one who's committing the problem in that sense.
Maybe, maybe not. Let us proceed.
Okay.
The claim as experienced from believers is that there is a God. And if you listen to the claims of the different believers, there are different claims. There's no disagreement about that.
So I'm going to stop you right now, because this is going back into the sort of like biblical claims kind of area. And what you've been specifically asked about is, why isn't Beelzebub an awful person for saying that Theo and others, quote, like him, unquote, are, actually rapists and not rapists, actually Nazis but not Nazis, actually child molesters but not child molesters, and so on and so on and so on, and writing 14 rambling screeds. I mean, I don't see how these...
He has tried to do the following. And the reason that I was making a comment about the use of language in terms of, redefining or looking at the word and playing with the word or reviewing the word or teasing out a particular meaning, etc., in midst of conversation is, for me, kind of tedious. And when I've actually tried it on other people, I found them to be frustrated. And listening to the conversation with Billsy and you, I can only imagine that he was frustrated talking to you, Theo.
Well, I don't deny that he probably got frustrated because he's not very good at that kind of thing, to be blunt.
But it gets worse when every word has a special analysis on top of it, which for a lot of people...
But so what?
I mean,
these are incredibly technical subjects.
Then I'm going to try to unpack some of the things that he did do in some of the conversations, which may have been overlooked by you.
Oh, and I just want to say, sort of preemptively here, this is going to be rich because the man hasn't said anything, and I've just historically, I've looked at the way you've sort of dressed his claims up, and I don't know that I've not found a single thing you've said that bears any relationship to anything Billsy Bob has ever said ever.
But let me see if I can just curtail this, and if I can, then good, and if not, then I'll be quiet. But I mean, if your point is that somewhere in the world there is this notion that blind obedience to the Word of God is good, right?
Actually, I know people who think that.
Okay.
That's not a claim that doesn't have people who actually support the notion.
All right, but so let me try to. What I would say though is that those people, however much they exist, are first of all probably actually saying something a little more complicated than that. Second of all, second of all, that still doesn't make them actually Nazis, right? And third of all, I don't say that.
Again, so I'm going to present the separation that he did attempt to go to, but got derailed in the conversation. And it was not cleaned up very well.
All right. So
but when he says XYZ label, and he says the Christian label.
All right.
The Christian label is an amorphous thing. We grant that, right?
No, because I don't know what you mean when you say amorphous.
When I say amorphous, it has so much filler in it that you really don't know what it could be.
No, I mean, what you're saying is that you don't know the connotation, you don't
what
know
the person actually means, what the person actually thinks. You don't really entirely know what they mean when they say the phrase,
right,
without actually knowing the person.
Right, but
it's an amorphous term.
But let's back up for a second. It's not an amorphous term. It's a term, and most terms are not going to announce themselves to have having a clear definition outside of context or usage. What does the word American mean? It's amorphous. What is person, thinking, doing, life? Those are all. I mean,
I'll say it another way. Some terms are more ambiguous than others.
Oh, see,
come up with an incredibly technical term that probably has an amorphous meaning.
And this is where I think. I mean,
it's incredibly hard to define this. Copper, define it. I mean, we get really specific things that still have the problem of having many meanings. I mean, I guess what I want to say is that while you may say it's an amorphous term, what I want to just say is that you're just talking about the nature of words. I mean, you're not really saying very much when you say it's an amorphous term.
Right.
I'm not arguing that.
It's not.
When combined with the rest of what I have to say, it may actually have more coherence.
It's not especially nor notably amorphous. I mean, so for example,
I'm not arguing it. I'm saying that unless this decoupling of terms kills the overall point. Should we not banter about the terms for a moment until I finish?
Yeah. Well, all right. So this is where you're asking to say. You have an objection, which is respectable, but do not voice it, for I am speaking.
I'm trying to go ahead and get the notions that he's trying to present, and I'm being assaulted on the particular language as opposed to trying to extract the particular meaning that I'm trying to share.
Well, in a way, I guess what you're saying is that you're trying to help me when I'm trying to do something that's broken. So go ahead. It's an amorphous term. Step one.
It's an amorphous term.
All right.
As such, you wind up having people fill in what that term could mean, for better or worse. And this happens with all the amorphous terms and notions that we have, in varying degrees.
Okay.
So,
I'm assuming none of that is contestable.
Christian is an amorphous.
In the way that I express in the way that I just finished expressing what I said, Theo.
Sure.
You are aware that I'm acknowledging that it's a fill-in based upon the person who's making the claim or who's receiving the claim, but it's not established as to what that is, and that's still open and waiting for negotiation.
Wow. I really don't know what you're saying at that point.
But yeah, so just
What I'm saying is,
continue
every
my
time
context.
hold on, whenever we say something, whatever it is, the individual words by themselves can have a multitude of meanings. But until you string them together within a certain context, the nature of what that meaning intended ideally should appear. Is that in dispute, gentlemen?
Well, I'm not sure it could be disputed because I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I can even interpret it, if I can even get some meaning to it.
If I said a bunch of pronouns and then later added some nouns, the meaning of the pronouns would become clear given the added nouns later, correct? Ideally?
Maybe.
I don't know what. So,
what you saying is that meaning, there is more meaning when there is context to words?
Absolutely.
All right, then that we can agree upon.
I suppose, yeah.
And with regard to what he's trying to say, it requires all of them juxtaposed together in order to get his point. But picking apart every word in the midst of him trying to say it kills his ability to say it.
Oh, and here I completely and wholeheartedly disagree. Beelzebub is ranting like a madman, and he's doing so incoherently.
I can imagine that it's ranting more from frustration than anything that. It's more from frustration in my mind's eye.
Well,
and I'd love for the frustration to end.
Whether or not he's like mad with frustration or mad from the DTs, he's still mad. I mean, it's just I have the transcript of one of his talks, and it's not just incoherent, it's not even cohesive, right? It's incoherent about so many different things interleaved and sort of simultaneously. It's just, he must do these things high. And how you can get, there's just no claim in it.
I'm forced to agree. I find it very difficult to understand what he's saying on a very concrete level. But, I find what's difficult about this conversation in my context is that, you project yourself as an intelligent person, and yet you seem to be, what you want to be, you seem to want to be doing here with us is to recapitulate his argument as he would.
Basically, the only thing that I can say is,
hang on a second.
What I'm getting from his argument. Hold on, because see, there's a disconnect here.
Well, no, you hold on.
I apologize. Go for it.
I'll try to be brief. You seem to be trying to recapitulate his argument as he put it, but the problem is that as he put it is the problem. He put it as he put it. The way he put it was incomprehensible. So recapitulating it in those terms doesn't clarify it. It just makes it bad. Again, for example, the sentence "Christian is an amorphous term" is a problem. It's not a thought.
Standing by itself, it would be.
No, in general.
Standing by itself, it's not. Again, if you had that as a sentence, and then you follow up with what you mean when you say amorphous within the context of how you're using it, then it becomes clear. There's a whole bunch of things that resolve with regard to understanding given more context.
So are you telling us this because you think he provides that context?
Yeah,
Yes, it does.
Oh, he does not. He does not.
Then I would go ahead and say, from my perspective, he does.
So
and I'm
what's
trying
the-
to share what I see.
a sentence like Christian is an amorphous term, and then I will clear it up later. Why not just present the clear...
Because it cannot be cleared up because it's linked to a bunch of other terms. And without the other terms, the exact nature of the meaning cannot be resolved on its own.
Sure, because I think throughout this whole thing that what all you really trying to say here is something like there is no objective meaning of the word Christian.
Well, that's already understood to be the case. So the nature of the meaning is what we're getting at when we say it.
What?
There is no objective meaning for the word Christian at this moment in time that anybody's claiming, correct?
But isn't that all you've been trying to say?
No, that's not all that I'm trying to say.
Okay. Are you trying to say that now?
Again, it's a longer point, and it requires lots of linkage.
Right, so start making those links.
Okay.
Yeah.
Number one, when I said that Christianity is an amorphous term, and I do mean all terms that have some amorphous elements to it, the people involved in that interaction are continually revising the nature of what they understand the word to be during the conversation. Now, is that an understandable notion?
No. I mean, it's understandable. I don't recognize...
What is,
I mean, all right, so
in that little blurb that I presented, what is the point of confusion, if any?
so are you saying that meanings are flexible?
Very, because
Right,
we have so
okay.
many overlaid meanings on any given word.
Okay. So the next chain or the next link in the chain is
Okay. Given that we have no authoritative base, and this is his argument, the claims are whatever one decides to make them. And I grant that some claims are better than others. That was not part of his argument.
so hold on. So far we have meanings are flexible,
Mhm.
and we have what's the next one? Oh, that there's no objective base.
There's no objective base, or
There's no referent.
there's no reference, no solid reference.
Referent, yes.
You mean absolute.
Correct.
Or, yeah, okay. So let's get
Okay.
this right. We have a term. The term is Christian.
hmm
Your point is that it's not objective, it's not absolute, that all meanings, including the word Christian, are flexible, and that, therefore, it's capricious.
It could be considered capricious, correct.
Yeah. Now, I think that anybody...
Well, okay, so I mean, I just there's one thing I want to jump in. I think he's saying that that's not my context point, but rather Beelzebub's point.
Correct.
Yeah. Now, do you understand my context? I'm going to ask you, do you understand that saying that it's objective, that it's, that the word Christian is not defined, I'm writing this down, it's not defined objectively or absolutely, and that meanings are flexible, that those words strung together do not amount to the conclusion, or not under themselves justify the conclusion that the word Christian is defined capriciously.
Not done.
Oh, so there's more. Okay, sorry. So
There's more.
What comes after?
So okay, but just when you say not done, what you're saying is that's not a conclusion marked out just by those claims. That's yet another proposition. So
Yeah, there's still more to go with that.
so well, but not just that, but that the relationship between those three propositions is not that there are two propositions and a conclusion. It's three separate propositions.
I haven't sat down and worked it out as propositional logic. I'm speaking to it in just...
Right, but that's not what I'm saying. But so what I'm saying is, are you asking the first two things, namely that meanings are flexible and that there's supposedly no ultimate referent? Are you asking those to do the work of supporting the idea that this notion is capricious, or is the that the definition of Christianity is capricious, or are you making a third unrelated statement that also the definition of Christianity is capricious?
Gentlemen, if I had to do this, I'd have to write it down to go through it as a syllogism.
No,
No,
you wouldn't. You would just have to say...
You're asking me to uncompact it as propositional logic. I'm not in a position to do that right now.
No. So, like, if I say it's raining outside and I don't want to walk to the park, okay, you can ask me if I'm not going to walk to the park because it's raining, or if I just also don't want to walk to the park. That's all I'm asking you. Is
There's more. Let me go ahead and add more and see if you can make sense of what I'm getting at in this.
Okay.
Because the next part is, there is a claim that there is a God.
Well, hold on. Actually, there's one thing I want to say. What I asked for is completely ordinary and easy to do, and I don't understand why you won't do it. But continue.
The reason that I wouldn't is I'd have to show and write down what those interlinkages are. I'm trying to do this off the cuff.
No, you wouldn't. I'm not asking for this like sort of deeply technical discussion. All I'm asking for is, are you just making are you making a statement that Christianity is defined capriciously by itself, or are you saying that somehow, in a way that I'm not asking you to work out, that your other two statements lead to the definition that Christianity is capricious?
For just to get to the point of capriciousness, the state of affairs suggests that it's capricious. I'm not trying to make a hard logic claim here.
Sure. Okay. That's close to what I was asking. Cool.
Okay. If there is an authority, as claimed, we should not have this range of, it's the same kind of argument, but we should not have this hodgepodge of possible interpretations. That's what he's actually saying.
Okay. So now I'm sort of loath to do this, but I have the same question. Do those other three lead to this fourth claim, or is this a new claim? In a sort of very touchy-feely sense. I mean, did you think you were leading up to this, or do you think this is a new thing?
They all gel together to say that the concept was made up and there is no God from the standpoint of what he's trying to present. Because there's no solid linkage by which you can claim. And this is kind of along the lines of all the horrible moral arguments.
So, okay. Can you repeat the last one for me again?
It all leads up to the idea.
Right, yeah, okay, yeah.
It all leads up to the idea that there is no God, given that there is no claimable authority. And part of his commentary has been...
Well, no, not that there's no claimable authority, but that...
There's no God that people can actually claim, given the confusion of the claims. One would expect some consistency if they actually got it from somebody.
Right.
Again, that's that point of expectations that I was speaking of earlier. Every time that people say something, there's a expectation that goes with that.
But that's an incredibly stupid and naive thing to say. I mean, it's not even worth saying.
Again.
And I'm not calling you stupid. I'm saying he's stupid for saying it. I mean, that's really dumb.
Hold on. Let's hold off on the pejoratives for a second and just unpack it.
Oh, that's not a pejorative. It's
at the moment, it would be taken as a pejorative.
A label and an assessment that I think I can back up, and you've done most of the work for me already.
Yeah. Let me ask the question. Let me ask the question. Are y'all looking to just beat him over the head based on expression, or would you like him to present it better?
Wow, I feel like both is true.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so I mean, this.
Let's face it, beating people upside the head does not help in general.
Well, if you hit them hard enough. Wait, no.
Like my context, that's something that you should say to him.
I will. Right. I cannot say.
And publicly.
I don't mind speaking publicly about the berating that people do, but guys, both of y'all have, shall we say, skills and frustration at your disposal that I would like y'all not to use.
But sir, we are. This is a remarkable comment.
It's leave Billsy alone. That's right. You need to be under a blanket and crying when you say it.
There's some people that, Mike, we had something of a not nice exchange. I tried my best to keep it civil. And there are a lot of people who have just made it nasty. I don't see a point to doing the nasty. I try to encourage actual dialogue.
Oh, see, well, okay. I might just grant you the former. I will not grant you the latter. So, and the example I'm thinking of is this fair exchange. When I called Billsy Bob a stupid person, you jumped in and said, "Well, why do you think he's stupid?"
And I was asking you to give me your particular take, and that would have been the end of it.
Right. So, but that's there's.
And it could have been emotional. It could have been anything.
In the way that conversation was working, that's not so. If you actually had the point that Billsy Bob was smart, all you would have had to have done is said, "Well, actually, Mike, I find these parts of the things he said to be very smart and very coherent, and here's why." I mean, that's how argumentation is done. That's how I'm doing it to you right now.
I wasn't going for an argument, Mike. I take time to try to understand where a person's coming from so that I can understand the rest of what they may say. And I spend a fair amount of time listening to people when I'm trying to understand.
But the thing is, the idea that Billsy Bob is stupid...
I don't know you, Mike.
Right.
I don't know your framework. I don't know what you consider of value, what you don't. Some people consider articulation a sign of smartness. Some people consider special phrases to be smart. There's all these things that people call smart and what they value or don't value.
Well, no. The point is that Billsy Bob is really dumb. I mean, this is not. It's not. I mean, you look at this rambling screed and you just go, "Oh, this is not like a well-ordered mind," and you just point at the mass of the comments he's making and say, these are not well ordered. I mean, that's the whole. Right. That's what it means to say someone is not very bright or not doing it well. So if you're gonna contest that, I think what you have to do is you have to come in and say, no, actually it's coherent, and you've missed the point, and there's all this sort of subtle stuff happening in there. You don't just say, well, why do you think? I mean, it's patently obvious why I think that. Didn't you read? I mean, didn't you listen to the thing? I mean, that's really all anyone needs to say, and that's why I get such a little cheat. I mean...
Actually, I got a totally different thing, but I'm understanding something else that you may not be putting in there, because it's, again, an issue of interpretation. And I guess I'll go ahead and do a review of what I saw in what he said.
Yeah, Mike, hang on a second, okay?
Yeah.
I think that my context, while... What you seem to be suggesting is that throughout all of Billsy Bob's presentation, there is in fact a very good and coherent argument that we could consider. I'm willing to grant you that simple premise, that there is in fact some sort of a kernel of real thinking going on somewhere in the 99% appalling presentation that he's offered us. The problem, sir, is that I've asked you to present that, and you found it very frustrating because I'm not quite sure why. The argument seems to be so disorganized on its surface that you can't even tell me what the conclusion is.
Because in part I don't really understand the context in which you understand material, but I'll go ahead and give it a shot. And
let's just focus. Let's just halt the conversation about whether or not Billsy Bob is good or not. Let's try to salvage something of his. Now, the irony of all of this is that I have tried desperately to ask him to just simply present the argument over and over and over again, so that we can just deal with it. Because
Theo, when you start restating a person's argument, it can get frustrating because the particular language that we use at times can really mess over another person.
Well,
it can be used for enlightenment or it can be used for obfuscation, unfortunately.
okay, so let me help you then by telling you that in any argument there is something at the end called the conclusion, which is the whole point of launching the argument, right? And that things that are involved in the argument that are actually not relevant to the truth or falsity of the conclusion are called irrelevant. Now, you launched this argument by talking about the word Christian and said that and described it in various ways. As far as I can tell, that is not relevant to the claim that.
And my commentary is that you are reducing this to a formalized argument, as opposed to looking at the elements of fact and the elements of emotion that's actually intermixed in the argument.
I have to say that I really want you to really write that sentence down and think about it. That my problem is that I'm trying to reduce this to a...
What I'm saying is, from a standpoint of a formalized argument, it may not hold water.
Yeah, I'm saying not only does it not hold water, but you can't even present it as a formalized argument.
I won't even argue that. But that's separate from whether he was trying... Hold on. But that's separate from him what he was trying to present. And the moment you take a person who's just trying to present their position and you dissect it as an intellectual exercise without understanding their intent of what they're getting at and addressing their intent as opposed to how they expressed it, it changes the flavor of it because it becomes a simple attack at that point.
No, that's
how it's experienced.
No, I mean, I can't believe we haven't died of irony at this point.
I'm imagining all manner of things here, but
you just said one of the most appalling things. You said that is the moment you actually analyze what somebody says, it collapses into nonsense. I mean,
and an attack.
Right, but that's an attack. I mean,
hold on.
Analyzing what
when I said
that's vigorously bad.
If a person says the day is good, it was a good day, okay, and then you chime in. So exactly what do you mean by good?
Okay.
In the context of how the average person presents good, and then asking, the good question, most will look at you like, what's wrong with you? Because it was not meant to be analyzed in that fashion.
Right, and the reason that argument breaks, or the reason that is just a crap way to put it is that Beelzebub's statements are intended to be analyzed.
Did he say that actually?
If he's making an argument, if he's entering into the discussion, okay, he's not just saying it's a nice day out. He's making a claim on our attention, and he's entering the discourse. His statements are just by offering them in the way he's offered them, they had better damn well be open to discussion and to argumentation and to and to
when
these
you
things.
start presenting how you argue with it,
hold on. Otherwise, he needs to shut up and go away.
I'm not arguing that there are different ways that one can make a claim. I'm not arguing that there are better ways to make a claim. I'm not arguing that.
No, what you're arguing about is whether or not his stuff is intended to be analyzed.
There's some people that I have had a discussion with in the past, and I realized that my approach was totally wrong. Because whenever you talk to whoever, it helps. It really does help to understand the frame by which they are intending whatever it is they're saying.
You're talking about the aesthetics of presentation, and we're not actually...
Actually, I'm not talking about just the aesthetics of a presentation. I'm talking about the nature of people. That emotional element is an issue.
Okay.
And I grant that we like to take it off the table for the sake of proper argument, proper form, proper this, proper that, because on a technical basis, we can go nuts.
All right.
But as a practical basis, the thing that you are objecting to right now with regard to how he's presenting in terms of the general ugly connotations is in part...
No, it's not an aesthetic concern. It's not. I mean, don't trivialize this into like a mere aesthetic.
What's not an aesthetic concern about whether a person's called or characterized as a Nazi? What's not an aesthetic concern about that?
Well, for one thing, no. So, what's not? We're not addressing how the things. I mean, it's
part of it.
It's not. It's not a matter of the beauty of it. It's a matter of the structure of the things he's uttering. And do they convey his meaning? And if he has a meaning.
If it did not have an inflammatory element to it, would it still be as big a deal?
Okay.
But that's not aesthetic either.
It's an aesthetic. It's definitely an aesthetic.
No, when you really insult someone,
That's an aesthetic.
No, it's not. You're misusing the word aesthetic. You need to look it up in a dictionary.
Go for it.
Guys, stop. My context. You're drawing distinctions here that we're not advancing on, or I'm not advancing at least. My objection to Bilsy Bob, you can leave on the table the idea that there are emotional values and resonances in the things he's saying. That's fine. I'm not trying to separate his arguments from emotions or their emotional values. Leave that on the table. That's fine. What I'm saying is that even when you would factor those things in, what you're left with is something that is ultimately either untrue, bad, or incoherent. And frankly...
Actually, I boiled down the sentiment into something that was actually nice and expressible, which is...
Say it.
It actually boils down to more or less a sentence. If there is a God, and we'll go in through the normal claims, because it's all about the claims that are made.
If there is a God.
If there is a God, which is all-knowing,
blah, blah, blah.
presence, and wants belief in it, then there shouldn't be the confusion. That is basically the argument boiled way down.
Right, and so that's why I'm saying he's dumb. I mean, this is a stupid argument.
Yeah, and I would agree.
But that the argument is predicated on the expectation that it should be at least possible that they can believe.
No. So this is just restating the misunderstanding.
Wait a minute. Are you saying that the expectation is not reasonable?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And should we, in that expectation, the idea of a God based upon that expectation, the fact that we have retarded people says that claim is false, right?
What?
The fact that we have retarded people who are incapable of belief,
right,
says that claim is false.
Says
correct?
that which no, that's not it at all. That's
Why
not,
wouldn't it be the case?
Why wouldn't what? So hold on. Slow down. The fact that there are mentally disabled people refutes what?
Refutes the idea that there's a God that wants belief, since it would be assumed that at the bare minimum everybody would be at least capable of belief.
Well, so I mean, I guess on some really, really basic level, I can get behind that. But what I'm saying is, you don't know what you're doing when you say that you have a God that only wants belief.
At this moment, I'm acknowledging that the term God is broken. And given that it's an amorphous term, like Christian...
No. You're actually redefining God to say that he has this one want.
God.
What's that?
Do you have a definition for God that everybody agrees on?
What?
Do you have a definition for God that everybody agrees on?
Well, I don't think that anyone does, because humans are sort of...
And that's why I say it's an amorphous term.
Humans are a fractious... But then there's no such thing as a non-amorphous term.
I'm not arguing that. But at this point, I'm arguing the context in which he's trying to present meaning. That's it. Nothing more.
A second. What you've done is called a red herring. What you've done is you somehow imagined that we need a coherent and universally agreed upon term in order to understand that this sentence is stupid.
Actually, what I'm getting at is, in the context of expectations that is generated on the claim, that is the argument. Whether you appreciate the argument or not, or whether we want to dissect the argument or not, is another matter.
No, listen. Just look at the sentence. If there is a God, and that God wants everybody to believe in God, right?
Go on.
Yeah. At that point, all we have to do is say, well, it seems like there's a strong religious tradition or a coherent philosophical notion about God that contradicts that depiction of God. That's all we have to do. We don't even have to affirm that God exists. All we have to do is say that the logic running through your sentence is contradicted by logic somewhere else.
Understood. And my commentary is that whatever argument, I'm not arguing the issues in the argument.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, you are.
Hold on. When I
No, you did. No, liar, pants on fire.
Mike, hold on. Because I know we had an exchange on this. When I gave you the conditional, that was one instance of a God notion out of how many innumerable possible God notions. So I grant that the claim may only apply to a certain section of God notions. Okay. But it kills those, but it doesn't address any of the others. Now, does it?
But all right. Well, what you're saying is that, so another way to say this is that the only way that this statement is interesting is insofar as it completely contradicts, or in other words, it completely establishes that the God that is contained within the sentence does not exist.
Correct.
Okay. Now, do you understand that nobody believes that God exists? That is you might as well say...
Actually, there are people... Hold. Now, this is where we get into that overreach. I do understand it's highly probable that somebody actually accepts that notion.
No.
Considering the numerous different versions of Christians, the levels of confusion, the levels of interaction out there, I'm fairly certain somebody thinks that's a reasonable notion.
Really?
I'm fairly certain. I grant that they have not done a sophisticated review of it, but they still think the notion. And whether it's reasonable or not is not a prerequisite for belief.
No, but it's clearly a profoundly irrational belief.
And there are lots of irrational claims out there.
No, but
I'm
okay.
not arguing that.
So let's... Yeah.
You've described a very stupid notion and then said, and that proves that a very stupid person's understanding of God is not good.
Actually, it's not even that constrained, sir. It's that claim. You see, you can ascribe the notion to the person, or you can just leave it at the claim and be done with it. And y'all have made it personal by ascribing stupid person as labeling. And y'all have gotten in this name calling that is not productive.
All right. We accept your review. It's not a particularly compelling one, but we accept it. Look, I could construct an argument that was very clear.
Hold on for a second, guys. Hold on. Let's let me end this, and we'll come back in a few.
Okay.
Stop. We're back.
Okay.
And we're back.
In terms of defending the argument, realistically speaking,
let's just take a breath and recap where we are.
Okay.
We've battered about a bit, and we've arrived at a place where what we're trying to do is isolate the actual argument inside Billy Bob's oeuvre, and you articulated it like this: if there is a God, and God wants belief in God, then himself, then there shouldn't be confusion. And then I think it would follow, there is confusion, therefore a God that wants belief in God does not exist.
Yeah, belief in itself, actually. Why do you say in God, just curiously?
Because it's a referent, and we need to, it's, in logic, if you have a pronoun, it's always best to explain what the pronoun is.
Yeah. What?
I found it odd. The only reason that I even had to ask is the notion of God versus between Christians versus the Muslims is a different concept, so it becomes rather different.
Well, this one's clarified. I mean, pardon me, qualified, right? It's not just it's of all gods out there, we're talking about the kinds of gods who quote want belief, right? In that argument.
In themselves.
Okay,
yeah.
so go on. It's a minor point. Go on.
Yeah. So I mean, my initial criticism is that, as I was explaining before the break, is that what this disproves is that a God that wants people to believe in God does not exist.
Well, and I'll say solely wants.
Solely wants, yeah. There's a little bit of an equivocation going on there, and I think that, as I would say, I don't think there's I think that, I mean, I know Roman Catholicism, Baptism, Baptists, Methodists, evangelicals, and Episcopalians, and those are just the ones I'm naming because I know their doctrines to some extent, and Roman Orthodox. I mean, the Orthodox branches, all of them would agree that God does not exist. And let me draw a quick illustration that might help make sense of the problem I have with this argument. You tell me why this argument is not interesting to you. Here it is. This is called Theo's geometric argument for something. Right? If there is a God, and that God is a three-sided square, that God does not exist. What's wrong with that argument?
It's already dead at the beginning, so by definition.
Right. Nobody believes that God is a three-sided square, right? So it's not interesting. It's not a particularly pregnant comment. It carries no impact in the world. And likewise, the statement, there is a God who wants to, and then it solely wants belief in God. In God. The thing is, nobody cares about that God. That God doesn't exist. That God is not described in Scripture anywhere. It's not particularly worshipped by anybody in particular. Maybe 5 people in the world might actually come along and say, no, that's the God I believe in.
Well, and I mean, and in a lot of traditions, I mean, this would be a notion of God that would probably, in a technical sense, be considered blasphemous. Right? I mean, it's, you're sort of, if you're going to reduce God to he just wants belief, I mean, that would be, I mean, sort of, how sort of disrespectful of just any of his sort of other attributes, right?
Again, when you start talking about attributes, personally, when I listen to all the things, it's all conjured, because you can't even say that the material by which you're claiming the attributes is even valid.
Well, no.
That's a personal claim. That has nothing to do with the other stuff going on. Go on.
Well, okay. Well, I guess at this point, I kind of I want you to go on. I mean, do you think that
people agreed with us
a God who only wants belief is a useful notion?
The comment of a God in and of itself is an unsupported notion.
No, that's not. No,
So what I'm saying is, we can play sentence games, and I don't necessarily get into that unless there's a particular point to doing so.
Well, there's a particular point here, right? I mean, the particular point is, has Beelzebub said anything like worth addressing, right? And so, what I'm asking you is the idea that the God that is, I mean,
when we reduce it without context of the world, it becomes a non-claim.
And so, right.
But so this is the problem, is that we're not trying to reduce it to something that it's not. We are trying to express it as it is. We are trying to capture his argument
in the frame of life. Then I'm going to try this frame of life thing again.
Not in frame of life, in full faith. We are trying to give him the benefit of the doubt and render his argument in a way that's
all right. Then
that we can talk about.
Gentlemen, the reason I wanted to ask whether either one of you believed in a God is that I would expect that if you had a belief in a God, there would be some expectations that went with that belief.
Likewise.
And I don't have any expectations that go with belief because I don't have a belief.
Okay, well, I just want to point back that, like, the three of us, well, actually, no, which is strange. I was almost going to say the three of us are in the same camp in one regard, is that none of us have made the claim that God exists. So it's hard for me to sort of understand what you're trying to do when you point to this distinction.
My point is, when people make the claim that their claim of God,
okay,
if they claim whatever it is that they claim, we can leave the God off for a second, the God notion off for a moment. Whenever we make a claim, typically there is an expectation that goes with that claim.
You yelled at me earlier for saying that there was an epistemological duty to the word claim, and now you're saying expectations that come with the word claim.
Yes.
All right, well, let's just remember that, because you're saying what I was saying, that there are duties that come with the word claim. And
actually, no, I'm not going to say, when you say, let's go ahead and explore it. When you say duties, what are you referring to?
What I'm referring to when I say duties in the sense of epistemological duties is that once you have made a claim, you are irrational if you are unable to offer up some theory of knowledge that justifies your making that claim. And if you can't offer up that epistemology, then the claim becomes irrational. It becomes arbitrary or capricious or something like that.
Okay.
Now, but let's
But
back up.
I wasn't going on that route with regard to claim.
Yeah,
I get your point, but I wasn't going that route.
Yeah. What you're
If
saying,
I said that I was caught in the rain, something real simple, then anybody who saw me the moments after me supposedly being caught in the rain would expect I was wet.
they would be unjustified in that, though, wouldn't they?
If I supposedly came from outside and it was raining, and I didn't have an umbrella, whatever the claim is, there's certain things that go with it. I could paint a scenario, but I'm hoping you get the point of expectation.
When you say expectation, what you mean is that there is inferential baggage, as philosophy.
Thank you.
Right?
Yes.
Yes. Now, you understand, of course, that the duty of clear thinking is to be explicit with that inferential baggage, right?
I grant you're right.
Yeah. Now, having said that, the duty of Beelzebub's thinking, or rather, Beelzebub's duty to clear thinking, is to be explicit with the inferential baggage that comes with his claims, right? Wouldn't you say that?
I agree. And he tried to do it as backdrop. I grant that it's not necessarily clear, but he did try.
Okay. Now, I will not deny that he tried. What I will say is that he tried, is that whether or not he tried, right, we still have the opportunity, and frankly, as intellects, we also, on some level, have a duty to do our best to try to understand what the hell he said.
Then,
especially people like me,
I'm with you,
who are painted as the primary character of most of what he said.
Starring villain.
The starring villain. Now, I think it's fairly obvious that I've gone to extraordinary lengths So much so that this is how conversation is happening with you, who is only a surrogate for Beelzebub. This is as close to him as I can get to try to say, what are you saying? What is your argument? Why am I for some reason implicated in all of these comments that you've made now for the last couple of months in 12, 13, 14 videos, whatever it is, right? Now the answer I get is, fuck you, you're stupid. I mean, so that's
right.
That's what I mean. That's the situation. That's as you like to say, the state of affairs. So, in coming to you and asking you, what is this thing that you're saying? You've laid it out a couple of times in one sentence, or tried to put it out in a couple of sentences. And every time you've done so, we get to a point where it's either incoherent or irrelevant or trivial. And you continue to say that actually there's this sort of lurking hidden content that we're not appreciating because it's in the backdrop, it's in the
content. Well, no, I'll go ahead and have that other piece, which is part of the issue with the terms.
Okay,
and that is whenever the word God is used, for the people who claim it, my understanding is that there is expectations that go with that claim. Mm-hmm. I haven't a clue as to what those notions, that baggage may be. I don't really know. And quite frankly, I have to explore it carefully because most people are sensitive when you actually do the inquiry.
So
let me come in. This is not important.
Right, and that's what I was going to say is like.
Actually,
I mean, we could.
It is important to the nature of the argument that he's presenting.
No.
Yeah, it's what I was going to say is like. I mean, we can go in this entirely new direction with you if you want and talk about these things, but these things have no bearing on what Bilsey said.
In order for this argument to make any sense, in order for there really to be some coherence here, we don't have to have a complete discussion about the brutal inferential baggage of the word God. What we need to do is pin down the attributes that are relevant to his conclusion and see if those attributes really do hold sway inside the Christian religion that he's talking about, that he seems to be talking about.
Well,
and frankly,
as a general statement, from just looking at how the landscape of Christianity is and the landscape of the concept God, they're both
it's really very easy to do. So, look, the attributes that are relevant here, right? He's only given us the one attribute.
Actually, I'll ask one weird question.
Yes.
In your mind's eye, what attribute is even valid?
I don't understand the question.
Me neither.
There are many claims of attributes for the notion God. What attributes do you find to be valid for the concept? Or are we just adding whatever concept at will?
No. All right. Let me say this. I understand that theology is sometimes an obtuse discipline, but there are obviously some attributes. In other words, while it is an obtuse discipline, we can clearly go to it as a discipline and say, theology, what attributes of God do you seem to think, and then we can parse it just as objective observers. I mean, in other words, I can talk about the attributes of a Hindu God without in any way
endorsing Hinduism.
Endorsing it, simply on an anthropological sense. I can look at it and talk about the religion just by observing some of the God, whatever is fiery, is not like this absurd thing, right? I mean, when we talk about the Christian God, right, you can talk about something like tied to beauty. There's an aspect of beauty, goodness, truth. Those things are fairly strongly established inside Christian theology. notions of the infinite, notions of the eternal, all seem to be fairly well established. And there may be some places.
And I'll go one step further.
Yeah.
And the basis for these claims are?
Well,
that's not the point, sir. The point is not whether they are themselves justified. The point is whether or not we can articulate.
Hold on. You made a comment a moment ago, and I agreed completely about the responsibility with the word claim. That it degenerates into something irrational if you cannot support it. I agreed with that. Because there are a lot of things that I'd like to agree, to be or not be, but realistically, I have to be able to support it if I'm going to make it as a claim, personally.
Okay.
Now, some people don't seem to care. I do.
That's probably a bit of a pose, but
yes, it was.
Continue.
Yes, it was. I acknowledge it. But looking at the theological claim,
yeah,
I'm left with another mess of claims. Because I don't know that there's agreement over the idea in theology, is there?
It would be remarkable if there were.
God, definition God, the attributes. Is there agreement?
There may be, but that's not relevant to this conversation because what I was just laying out was this idea that there is such a thing as Christian theology, which depicts this character, God, with certain attributes. And we could talk about whether or not that thing is logically potential or logically impossible, right? Without talking about from whence, the ideology of those attributes. We don't have to do that in order to talk about whether the thing is logically coherent. In fact, they're just separate inquiries.
Yeah, as a conceptual notion, we can play all day.
But that's what we're talking about.
Hold on. But my point is, with regard to Beelzebub's particular argument, it's a pretty simple argument. Whether it has validity or not in the overall scheme of things, that's another matter.
Well, I just want to be very, very clear that it's actually the argument that we've come to be dealing with in the last half hour is not properly Beelzebub's. It's actually properly yours, in that you're the one who articulated it, and he just endorsed it because he couldn't say it.
Point taken.
And by the way, that is the matter. You just said it is another matter. No, that is the matter. That's what we're talking about, is whether or not that argument is conceptually, and I don't know quite what you mean by that, but
within the constraints of what was intended of the argument, it would be valid. If you
with what was intended within the
narrow definition of God as would be appropriate for the argument, it would be a valid argument within that construct, to my knowledge.
Okay, but I just want to emphasize that there is a nearly infinite class of completely valid arguments that are useless, right? Useless and uninteresting and
lots of them.
And hold on a second.
Sure.
Mike, this is not the point. But the point is that if you want to now shift this conversation to some other topic, like how do you establish the attributes of God, that's an interesting topic. But that is not what Beelzebub or you have ever said.
Actually, he was actually getting at that at one point when he was going on about what is a Christian.
Okay.
And the idea of a God directing things, because the idea that there is a Christian idea, the way that he was formulating it, dictated that there should be something that defined what is a Christian. And given there is no, shall we say, consensus as to what a Christian is, we have a concept of it. It amounts to an essentially contested term, given the menace associated with it. We don't have an authoritative notion, and everything that he's been claiming kind of gets back to an authoritative notion.
Well, wait, hold on. What do you mean by gets back to an authoritative notion?
This is a very different thing.
Yes.
What I'm getting at is
radically changed your interpretation of what is initial. That argument about Christian is an amorphous term. You already agreed that that is the nature of language, and it's a relatively trivial comment. Now you're suddenly
what's
saying,
the definition of a triangle? What I'm getting is there's some terms that are clearer than others, and the degree to which we have murkiness with regard to the claim. Everything has a degree to it, right, gentlemen?
Everything has a degree to it?
In terms of words, the nature of the meaning. Like when I say triangle, we now know a form, but we don't know size. We don't know composition, even if it is whether it has any composition. But we have a form by definition of triangle, correct?
There are there's probably literally an infinite number of ways to define a triangle.
Yeah.
Some are conventional and more useful because of parsimony, but I mean, convention.
But the basic definition triangle gives us a form.
Well.
And all the other things may be up in the air as to what the nature of what we're talking about when we say triangle may be. But the form of three sides is the basic.
You mean image. You mean that in our imagination, something...
In our imaginations. We have something as a reference base that allows a constraint with regard to what the possibilities would be.
And
kind of. But,
right.
But again, you changed again.
What I'm getting at is the term Christian does not seem to have as close a knit of what is being claimed or can be claimed realistically.
So
it becomes this big contextual mass that you're always trying to figure out exactly what a person means when they say it, just like the word God. You're always trying to figure out what they mean when they say it.
Well, so what I want to point out, and this is going to seem rather pedantic at the start, is that those things are exactly true of the word triangle as well. So one of the things that we would like to, for example, instinctively say about a triangle is that the sum of its included angles is 180 degrees, which is only true in a flat and Euclidean space. Like as soon as you get to other geometries, you're just all bets are off again. For a very concrete concept like a triangle, which just goes to show, like, sort of how superfluous this supposed point about their sort of the ambiguity of the word God actually is.
And let me try to be a little less pedantic in this comment. That, I mean, when you say the word Christian is an amorphous term, I'm not particularly impressed because I think that's a feature of all language anyway. But secondly, what I'm surprised is that you don't recognize that about remarkably common everyday words. I mean,
I recognize it's true in varying degrees about every word.
Yeah, but the only reason why it's noticeable right now is because we spend a lot of time thinking about the word Christian. It's a particular word.
I'm aware that it's true in many things, but as a general rule, we have more convergence, at least it seems, on many other notions.
What? Say that.
What I'm saying is we seem, and notice I'm indicating, because this is a perceptual thing, because I have no way to go in anybody's head. It seems that we have more consistency over a lot of other things in terms of what it is that we're talking about.
Well, and so that's what my bit of pedantry was all about. I mean, there's not a concept or a word that you can use that I can't do exactly that same thing.
Understood. It's possible. But as a general frame of reference with regard to general communication, there are a lot of other words that have less ambiguity to the other person.
No, what you're saying is that as an historical moment right now, as a broad culture, we may more universally be able to agree on certain terms because in this moment, that's the context that we find ourselves in. We may not really disagree very much about the meaning of a word like alcohol or tobacco or something, like that. There may be less variety when we just count up all 6 billion minds than the word Christian. But, I mean, to be very blunt, 500 years ago, it was probably not so. And it's just an historical thing that just sometimes...
I agree. I'm not arguing. Again, everything is within the context. I'm going to go ahead and say context of now, for the sake of getting a little more clarity.
But see, the thing is that what I don't understand about this argument is all that this ultimately could possibly do is say that aside from pointing out the limitations of language, again, which is trivial and irrelevant, is to suggest somehow that the word Christian is just not a particularly useful word. And I have to say, actually, I think there's a lot of people in the world who would agree with you, but they would call themselves, very religious people inside the religion that we're talking about. I will say that I happen to also think that the word Christian is a particularly meaningless word. Not meaningless, but or unhelpful word, precisely because were I to adopt it, people like Billsy Bob would think I was some sort of horrible person. I mean, it's a very confusing word, particularly when people like Billsy Bob go around misusing it so much.
Again, that's part of the complaint about the word, but it goes back to the expectation of what you call God.
Whose complaint?
Bill's complaint, and personally, I've actually stopped using it as much because I don't find any utility in the word, as you would say.
But here's the problem with the word Christian, is that people like him go around using the word so preposterously.
Right.
From my standpoint, it's been used that way forever and a day. So,
wait a minute.
No, that's
not
a bit flippant.
Hold on, not in the way that Billsy frames it, but from my standpoint, the resurrection story did not register, so it's preposterous in that frame. Again,
about whether the content of the word Christian.
What I'm saying is the claim, whatever your notion of the word, has a bunch of other things associated with it, does it not? So I grant that my particular notion of it may have been bizarre, and as I listen to other people's notions, some of it's more coherent, some of it is not. But it is clear that there's no consensus about the notion.
No.
And as I listen to people...
You're equivocating. Excuse me. You're equivocating. The question is, does the word Christian refer, not does what the word Christian refer to, is what the word Christian refer to a series of truth claims that are true. The question is just, does it refer?
Right.
Depending upon how you take the word, it is either representative or reference.
What? What does that mean?
I'm saying that some people take the word to be representative as opposed to just a reference. I agree. For our discussion's sake, we'll leave it at reference.
No reference.
Right. I guess I don't understand either. I don't understand the meaning of either the words representative or reference that you're using there, and I further do not understand the distinction.
Okay, for some people, when they say the word Christian, it's not a reference, it's a state of being that they're speaking to.
No, okay, so what do you mean reference?
To an idea. Purely.
Not state of being?
Not as a... Okay, it's kind of hard for me to articulate it. Give me a moment.
Sure.
Do you make a distinction between a set of characteristics or a holistic person? Do you make a distinction between those two?
Say with charity, I think this is not going to work out for you.
I'm asking, do you make a distinction? I'm not saying that what I'm about to try to say is valid or not.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Let me just back up. you were equivocating. There is no difference between representation and reference. The word Christian refers to something, and you're correct, it's amorphous, and although that's trivial, but it refers to something, okay? That is a different statement, a different inquiry than does what it refers to, are those true things? You, for example, just said that a moment ago, you said that you didn't understand the word Christian because you didn't buy the resurrection. But you understand that that's not indicating that the reference is broken. It still refers to the resurrection in some sense.
Oh, I did not deny that. I just said I found it absurd in that regard.
Or is it true or something? So let's just get that clear. There's words only refer. They are only references to ideas or things or objects.
No argument.
Okay, good. So we have the word Christian. It's a reference to many, many things.
And in order to make a meaning of whether or not a particular reference is valid with regard to any particular claim, you'd need to have a reference by which you can adjudicate the other claims by.
What? Hold on a second. References are not valid or invalid. They are not.
What I'm saying is, when you say it refers to something,
yeah.
That something could be a collection of ideas.
Yeah.
It could be any number of things that it could refer to, correct?
They could be lies. I mean, they could be false things too.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And in order to actually review whether or not the other ancillary things that would be associated with that thing is valid, you'd have to uncompact the first part.
No.
As to what it is
that
you're claiming. In other words, if I were to say that so-and-so can walk through walls,
yeah.
Okay? Now, we're assuming that the person is solid. Let's say
I think.
Let's say the cat can walk through the wall.
Let's
okay?
not.
That's safe.
Let's just return to the actual issue. When we say the word Christian refers to many things,
mm-hmm.
we can talk about each of those things individually or group them in certain ways or whatever, and evaluate them without ever needing to, quote unquote, unpack the word Christian.
Unfortunately, we can shift through different claims at will, and any one of the statements that we may dare make becomes invalid as we shift what it is.
But I mean, that's completely ordinary. I mean, so
I'm not arguing that, and that is why it's a particularly difficult thing to actually talk about.
No. What I'm saying is, it's not a difficult thing to talk about because it's completely ordinary. Like, all this stuff is true about the word rocks, right? I know what a rock is. I know one when I see it, and I can recognize them. However, I'm remarkably ignorant of the composition of rocks, like what's inside them. But even though I'm remarkably ignorant of geology, I can still use the word rock in a perfectly ordinary and useful and usual way. And it's the same with the word Christian. I may be ignorant of whatever, particular bits of doctrine exist within any one or hundreds of denominations, but I can still say Christian, and I can still use that word in a perfectly ordinary, unremarkable way.
Okay, let's try this again. Let's go with the overused example. Bachelors and married. You can, if you don't know what a bachelor is, you can't evaluate whether or not the statement, he's a married bachelor, makes any sense without knowing what bachelor is, can you?
No, sure, okay.
And my point is that there's a whole bunch of other claims that make no sense unless you know what the thing is. That's all.
Like what?
Yeah.
Give us a claim. Remember, it has to use the word Christian.
Christians don't believe in a God. And if you don't know what a Christian is, then you wouldn't understand that that statement couldn't be true.
Well, no. Ooh. It's not necessarily untrue, because there are Christians who don't believe in God.
Okay, fair enough. But again, how would I know that without knowing that exists?
No. So, I'm sorry. You just lost. You can't say that you won.
I'm not arguing that I won anything. It's not a contest to me.
But you understand that you made a claim. I completely
You made a claim, and by technicality of what you knew about the word, you could say that it was or was not valid based upon what you knew. But I could not make any comment about that because I didn't know that.
No, let's not talk about talking about things. You said that what you're trying to do is suggest that somehow it's necessary for us to unpack the word Christian in order to talk about it.
I'm saying that there's some claims that are completely meaningless without understanding what the thing is.
Well, no, it turns out that it's actually not meaningless. It's just wrong. I mean,
So it would be wrong. What I'm saying is I can't determine. Can you actually determine the merits of anything unless you know what it is?
Right, but
can you really do that?
Okay, so here's one: rocks are heavier than water.
We
right?
know what rocks are.
Right, and they are and they are heavier than water. You would say.
Based on what I understand.
Okay,
yeah.
well then you're wrong because there are rocks that float.
Yep, I do that.
I mean, it's completely ordinary what you're trying to do.
In the projection world, you don't really have many floating rocks. I grant that yes, the material composition of the rock could allow for a floating rock.
It's called pumice. You scrub your feet with it.
Yeah,
I'm not arguing that we can have these things.
Nothing could be more pedestrian than scrubbing your foot with a rock.
Hold on. What was my argument in this? That your understanding of the thing determines whether or not you understand the validity or invalidity of the claim that you can make of the thing.
Uh-huh.
And if I wasn't thinking about all the different substances that a rock could be made out of, I made a errored claim.
Sure.
On the basis of my ignorance of that thing at the moment, or considered at that moment. But it still applies. You have to understand what it is in order to know whether the claim is or is not valid.
What? It's the last bit that got winner fast. What?
Oh, no.
You have to understand what the thing is to some degree, something about it in order to know whether the claim is correction.
No.
With regard to the claim being made, the particular aspects of the claim being made, you cannot determine whether the claim is or is not valid without knowing something about the thing.
No, you're completely wrong, and let me try to explain why.
Okay.
Actually, the way this argument, the way we could create a story here is that when you agreed with the statement that rocks are heavier than water, you were using the word rock and referring to certain things.
Yes.
Mike and I were using the word rock and were referring probably to many of the same things, but we also knew about some other thing that it referred to.
Understood.
Okay, so the problem is not that you didn't know what the thing was, what rock was, or the nature of rock or something. It was that you didn't have reference to pumice, this other rock.
I didn't have reference to your references.
No, you just didn't have reference to the word pumice. That's all.
Pumice, but again, that says that I lacked the knowledge at that moment of those additional things. I didn't consider it.
Okay, and that's however.
It meant that my evaluation of the claim was wrong.
Right. Yeah.
I'm going to say it. That's fine. The point is that there is nowhere in all of those 6 different ways we came to explain what just happened is the idea that you had to know what a rock is.
Wait a minute.
Or that the notion of rocks was somehow broken.
Your ability to say that I was wrong was contingent upon your knowledge, was it not?
No, it was contingent upon our referencing the word pumice.
which is additional knowledge
Well, okay.
that I did not have at that moment, which allowed you to make a claim that I did not consider at that moment.
So,
correct?
sure.
Yes.
And the thing I want to interject with is that you did, and this is an overused word, but exactly the same thing in your error about Christianity. And the correction was exactly the same.
Again, I'm not arguing the issue on the amorphousness of the word. I'm arguing that unless we have something concrete or some fashion to define what it is that we're talking about, any all claims that we would or would not want to make become questionable.
Right, and that's there just as much for the word Christianity as it is for rock.
Again, notice I'm not arguing it.
What are you arguing about the word Christian?
You're taking refuge in ambiguity here, and we need to stop for a second. When you said the words, in order to talk about Christianity, we have to unpack it, right? Was that a simplistic way of saying that we have to know what it refers to?
Yes.
Okay, then you're not correct, because we don't have to know what the word rock refers to in order to know that it refers to pumice, because there's lots of things that rocks refer to. We could never possibly hope to enumerate them all.
Okay.
One gravel pit would stymie us.
So,
Right.
again, I'm going to make the comment about the claim. If I don't know the thing in question, can I really expect to get a good claim if I don't know what the thing is?
Yes, you can, because you
Please
can know
share how I would get a good claim on something that I don't know anything about. And I will ask you, what claims could you make over a made-up word?
Let's not equivocate. Now, hold a second. Now you're equivocated 3 times in a row.
Please share with me what am I equivocating.
So let me answer your question. When we talk about the word rock, right, we are able to come to claims without being able to talk about all the things that rock refers to.
Yes, but we know something about what a rock typically is. We have a concept of rock, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
So you need to let me answer the questions. Yes, we do have a concept. But that's not the point. The point is that we're able to use the word rock to refer to some things in the context of some particular claim, evaluating some particular claim. We do not have to know what the word rock refers to exhaustively. That's preposterous.
Okay. Notice you added exhaustively as opposed to just knowing about it.
All right, but this is why we need to be careful with our language, because when we talk about the word Christianity, for example, right, it's incredibly easy to start listing some references of the word Christianity. And in fact, that's pretty far into human knowledge just by listing 30 attributes.
And I have said that the term, from my standpoint, is very amorphous. So any claim that I make, except for some really, virtually any claim I dare make may be questionable by some group of Christianity, quite frankly.
So, having now completely reversed yourself, what is your actual complaint with the word Christianity?
I've already said that it's amorphous.
But you now
and when I say this, when I'm using the word amorphous, I'm speaking in terms of what you can realistically expect to know about the person as it relates to the claim. I'm doing this as a pedestrian thing. I'm not trying to go into a treatise on it.
But then why make the point, I guess?
You've already conceded that it's fairly easy to list some of the references of Christianity. So why is it interesting?
I can make a bunch of different references, all of them contradicting each other. I have no basis to claim any one of them something that any particular group is going to accept as true.
For example,
you made a comment that I didn't know about, which is you have Christians who don't believe in a God.
Well, all you'd have to say, for example, is most Christians believe in a God.
Yes, but the fact that you can say that most Christians believe in a God says that there's some who don't. which is a surprise to me.
Well, it shouldn't be, because it's atheists who pointed that out, is that there are lots of Christians who don't really believe in God. I mean, I'm actually not surprised by it. It seems sort of obvious to me.
I'm actually surprised, but, that's just me. Again, I don't claim all the extensive knowledge of everything.
So, okay. I mean, is your point in saying this in my context, just to say, just to be sort of humble, or do you have some sort of substantive thing here? Is it just like, I just don't know, or are you making some?
I'm making a comment that I recognize there's some terms that are so horribly broken that only in general notions do you dare use them with any hope of them being accurate.
I just can't. The word Christian is, I mean, it's a label that refers to, broad collections of references that are collected in a variety of different ways. And probably there's no single necessary attribute to Christianity. But so what? I mean,
again, if you're trying to make a claim about something, then the integrity of the claim is contingent upon whether or not the elements that you're using are true.
So, okay.
So don't make a claim about Christians. Make a claim about something that is before us.
Are you saying that there can't be geologists?
I haven't claimed that.
Well, I mean, in reference to the rocks example.
I understand the concept of geologists. I understand that there's a wide variety of things that they study.
But I mean,
would I be able to enumerate or reduce it to a single claim? No, I don't think I can. But I have a general notion of what is meant by it.
But you're not paralyzed,
right,
by the word geologist.
I'm not paralyzed by the word Christian, except that I understand that there's some limits to what I can even think about saying. Let me step back. Because you've already shown me that I have a point of ignorance regarding the word. So no, I realize I cannot actually make good claims regarding Christianity.
So let me put this to you, okay? There are almost no words in the English language which lend themselves to absolute definitions.
Understood.
Right?
And my use of the word have been for a general notion as opposed to the most, shall we say, secretive of notions in a sense.
So the irony of this is that you accused me at the beginning of this conversation of focusing too much on words, individual words. And it seems that the entire central thesis of this argument, of your argument, is nothing but that, of focusing on the single word and saying, but it means at least 10 things, how could we even know it exists?
That was my comment as to why the argument does not hold a range. Within the context of whatever particular notion of it, it may have some point of value and validity. But again, that would be limited within the scope of whatever the person was intending when they said the word. And in order to get that, you need a scope of what they were trying to say about the words, which entails other. Hold on.
No, because it's. I mean,
you do realize that every notion of a word that we have is a constructed notion, right?
So, in the nicest way that I can possibly say this, that last little stream there, it was just word salad. I mean, there was no meaning in it. It was just
okay. If I were to tell a story, about a thing, that story would impart a notion about a thing, correct? Ideally, assuming I can make a coherent story.
Assuming, very provisionally, yes.
Yes, thank you. Because I'm not really a story maker. But let's say I could somehow make a coherent story about something. I've effectively created a notion by which we can now talk about, because I've created a notion. What we actually get from our different perspectives of the story about that notion may be vastly different things. But we do at least have a notion that's been created, right? I'm asking for agreement on that point. Do I have agreement on that point or not?
I don't really understand what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, it's, yeah.
If I were to tell, okay, I have a little thing in my profile that I call the U-link, which is a statement about the universe. Basically, the U-link is a infinite immaterial span of space from which universes emerge. I've made a statement about a thing that I call the U-link. Is there something in there that you understand to be based upon the language that I use?
Jeez, not really.
No, sorry.
I called it the U-link, and I gave it some attributes of sorts. I said what it is. Is there something there that is in any way...
Try to help you out. Just say the candle is lit, and then try to make your point.
I was using a created word of sorts, but yeah, a candle is lit. You're saying something about it, but what are you saying about it? You understand that it's, you got a flame, but you understand what a candle is. And
Yes.
I wanted to go from something that you didn't to something you didn't know, and the idea that you're creating something as a byproduct of your ignorance of the thing.
What?
And that's the point I'm making. Whenever we have a concept that no one has seen or knows what this thing is,
Seen and met Christians.
I feel like, every time you say that's the point I'm trying to make, you make a new point.
Yeah, I have to say it's very frustrating.
I'm making a new point when I say that the notion of a word is contextual to the person's experience.
Boy, what does that mean?
I'm saying that every word that everybody uses has certain levels of commonality to other people and some levels of great disconnect depending upon the frame of life in which they live.
Well, sure. I mean, that seems uncontroversial.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's fine.
And
But another way to say that, by the way, is that that symbols refer connotatively and denotatively.
Right.
Just to take us back to Linguistics 101.
fair enough. But that also means that the degree to which one does not share the same background for a given linguistic concept, notion, is a degree to which there may be some disconnect.
Okay, so what you're
Okay.
saying,
But
what
that's-
you're saying is that connotations vary.
Correct.
Okay, I'm sorry to make these statements so simple, but because you see, it seems like you think you're making extraordinary points.
I don't consider, for the people who know,
the nature of language, and I mean, there's really nothing about the nature of language. I mean, I teach language. I mean, it's not hard to talk about the nature of language.
I'm not arguing about the nature of language.
Are you sure you're not arguing about the nature of language?
Actually,
Kind of sounds like.
the point I was trying to make is the context in which a person means something
Okay.
is definitely a feature of language, but we have to understand the nature of. Let me step back. Let's go to linguistics. If we're trying to understand a tribe of people and their language, what must be done to do it?
I love the way you say these things like it's like I'm obviously going to say, well, music.
No,
Yeah.
well, give me some general notions of what you do.
Why don't you give me like a hypothetical or just an example of the kind of thing you're after? I mean, like actually
The
say.
kind of thing that I'm after is the backdrop of all the conversations that Billsy has had is part of the linguistics of what he's trying to express.
The linguistics of what he's trying to.
Let's go back to what Bill Zebot tried to do. There's two issues on the table here. The first is the word Christian, and talking about how difficult it is to define this word meaningfully. The connotations vary, right? Which, by the way, has never stopped anybody before. I don't know why it's such a paralyzing point now.
And like not just inside of like theological discussions, but for any word, anywhere, at any time.
Yeah. And then, secondly, the similar comment that's made about the word God, that it's hard to define what it refers to. Now, as far as I can tell, these are two radically different comments. The problems with the word Christian are ordinary and are trivial because it's common to all words.
Right.
There is, however, an interesting philosophical point to be made about problems with the word God.
And unknowability and
Yeah, that's a different thing altogether.
ineffability and
Exactly. I mean, so it's very hard for me to think about these things because, on the one level, I'm trying to give this argument a little bit of the benefit of the doubt, but every time I do so, I have to remind myself that we're accidentally also borrowing from the problems of the limitations of language. So, another way to put this is that, however, there has to be a separate assault on the word God than on the word Christian, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and if I can just to make sure that I understand at least, I mean, what we're saying is, or what you're saying is that the problem with trying to assign meaning to the word Christian is an ordinary one, in that it's like the one about rocks, and it's like the one about every other sort of ordinary definition out there. Whereas the one with God is like, it turns out embedded in the concept of God are these ideas about him being unknowable, and sort of not being open to the ordinary way in which we know things.
And not only that, but it's one that is pointed out by...
Actually, the idea of unknowability... Actually,
by what?
From my standpoint.
I said it. Can I finish my sentence? Let me finish my sentence. The problem of the definability of God is one that's pointed out by Christian theologians. That emanates from piety, not from atheism.
Right.
I mean, atheism might mention it, but I mean, it's kind of like saying, a three-person God is mysterious. I mean, it's not. That's that's why it's called the Trinitarian mystery, right? I mean, it's I don't know. Anyway, I mean, I just wanted to point it out that it's typically a pious thought that God is hard to define.
Right.
And from my standpoint, given that there's no basis, that would be amount to meaninglessness.
So how do you know that there's no basis?
I said, from my perspective, you've said a bunch of things, but I've heard no base that I can ascribe to. I hear concepts. I hear lots of concepts. Again, this is one of those points of relating. I don't relate to the concept. I don't know what, and there's so many different meanings to the concept that is implied or implicit when people say it, that it is meaningless as a word to me, other than a notion that people hold.
Right, and you're describing agnosticism. That's not. Yeah, that's fine.
I don't know.
Well.
Again, whatever label, fine. It's not really that big a deal about the label to me as more the content and what they're meaning. And I grant that a single word does not necessarily imply any particular thing in the way that you two seem to take a given word.
Right. Again, you're just describing agnosticism. You're saying that some people seem to have what you call a base, and you don't. You just don't see it. Nor do you definitively know that the base does not exist. You're just saying you don't know it. That's
So hold on. I mean, I was just lumped into a group. You said that I did something. What is it that I'm doing? Just so I can understand.
Oh, I'm saying in terms of word use. My use of word. When I think of a word, I have a whole bunch of normal notions of that word. However, I'm waiting for the person to actually say all the details of what they're trying to present, because I listen to all kinds of things, and I have to extract what they mean, because the words that they use may not even be the correct words. And I, as well, screw up words on occasion. So the total context of it allows me to make corrections or even ask questions as is appropriate to what it is they're trying to share.
So I'll ask again. What was I doing?
My apologies to you, Mike.
No.
No.
I mean, it's.
Go on. I'm going to go ahead and share.
Yeah.
I actually lumped you in with Theo with regard to hammering on the words.
No, I mean, I don't even know what you're saying that Theo's doing. I mean, so what's?
He's hammering on the individuality of a word and meaning, as opposed to the extrapolated meanings of the words in concert.
Man.
What does that mean?
Yeah.
When you put a bunch of words together, there's an idea that forms. Whether that's a coherent thing or not, that's another matter. But an idea does form. If I were to say, put two words like a jelly porcupine, it's an absurdity, right?
I don't think this is going to work for you either. I think what you're trying to say, that doesn't work either.
If I say jelly porcupine, and you try to create something coherent out of it, without questioning me about it, I'm imagining that y'all get all kinds of notions.
Okay.
From a new kind of candy, to an ill-formed porcupine, to what the hell?
Okay.
But it did create a notion, or did it? I'm asking.
I think you mean create an image, not a notion.
No, I'm actually meaning not just maybe an image, but something else. I'm not limiting it to a picture or something. I'm also including an emotional feel. I'm also including a possible reality or altered reality notion. I'm asking what kind of thing, if anything, was generated.
I have no way of answering that question. I have no idea. You're trying to build up something using philosophical language, but you just don't.
Or language that sounds philosophical.
It's not even intended to be philosophical, guys, from my standpoint. It's meant to try to elicit something in you to what I'm trying to speak to. That's all. It's not meant to be anything more than that.
Let's abandon this line of questioning because I'm not sure I even understand how to participate in it.
Right.
Let's try to recap where we are because we may be at a good point to stop, but we may not be.
Right.
I'm fine to go on, but let's try to figure out where we are in this conversation so far. I began at the very beginning of this conversation by saying that my interest in this conversation is that there's a character named Beelzebub who has spent several hours of YouTube time launching a very individualized attack against me that's full of fairly obviously repugnant lies and it represents, I think, a very appalling human act that he's done. This is an appalling human action, an immoral action. I am comforted by knowing that most of the people I've interacted with on YouTube have agreed that this is that he's essentially done an immoral thing, that most of what he's saying is incoherent, that he's a deeply irrational and troubling person, and they join me in the comment that his affiliation with atheism is bad for atheism, and I would say that as well. And now,
guys,
there are a couple of exceptions.
Hold on, because you point this out regularly to me when I do it. Would this be about as bad as the pedophile priest's association with Christianity?
Well, I mean that's a part of it, I think, but it's a no. Wait, no. Hold on, no. I'm not. No, I think what Theo's more referring to is this whole is he a Nazi or is he not a Nazi?
No, I'm saying with regard to this idea that atheism is a club is bizarre to me.
What?
It's bizarre to me that it's bizarre to you.
As a social notion, I grant people like to lump people
together. I must have missed a segue here.
Yeah, I too. What happened? You asked me a question, and I have yet to answer it.
You made a comparison with regard to him being bad for atheism.
That's not a comparison.
And my comment, would that be the same as a pedophile priest being bad for Christianity?
My answer is twofold. the same, as in the association is the same, as in he is a part of a group and his association is bad for the group. The moral weight of what he's done versus what a pedophile does is obviously less.
Right.
What a pedophile does is obviously worse. But in the broad question, yes, by a pedophile priest being associated with the religion, it is bad for the religion. For the fact that Beelzebub is associated with atheism is bad for atheism.
Okay.
You know what we need are some moderate atheists to speak out against him. Otherwise, all atheists are completely complicit in the worst that Beelzebub says.
And
I'm being a little
commentary
facetious.
regarding his argument, because I grant that the use and how he's presented it is egregious. I grant that. I've even said that. I've acknowledged that.
Have you said that?
Mike, did I not say to you that it's an egregious argument? In commentary.
You may have. I don't remember reading that. I mean, I'm not going to...
Because I grant it's an extreme argument. I think I used the language extreme.
Okay, yeah. Well, which is different than egregious.
Yeah, I can amend it to egregious.
And let's, 1 second, it's not the argument that is egregious.
It's his conduct.
Actually, using the...
Don't say
at this point, the whole thing has become a drama episode of sorts.
Well, I mean, you can diminish it by calling it a drama exercise. I don't think it is a drama thing. I think it's an actual attack. I think it's an actual moral action that we can think about. I'm not saying that he burned my house down.
Right, yeah.
It's an obviously moral act that's been sustained over the course of several months.
And my question is, why have you continued to engage him?
Because as both an intellect and as a moral person, it's incumbent upon me to participate in this dialogue.
And also, I mean, it's an affront too. I mean, sort of on, that it's you would be completely warranted in
present the implication that there is any answer to that that's interesting.
Right.
There's a number of people on YouTube that I've dealt with. I've had a momentary stop at Mega Sage's place. I'm assuming y'all know the name?
No.
Y'all don't know Mega Sage? No. Neither of you.
Oh wait, is he the the flat Earth Santa Claus?
Say what?
Is he the flat Earth Santa Claus guy?
Quite possibly.
Yeah, I've seen his videos, but he's not really enough to. I mean, he's just yeah.
Okay. There are many people on YouTube. They have their points and non-points. And at the end of the day, it seems to me that if you are having a bad interaction or you cannot talk to the person for whatever reason, it seems more appropriate to leave it alone until there's a better vantage point from which to do it. Now,
well, that's a very sort of, unrealistic and sanctimonious kind of. I mean, it's it's like saying, well, some people in the streets have their, have their pitchforks and their torches, but
we have talk. We can talk, but the moment we get to a level of we're doing something, well, we've changed it now, haven't we?
No, you don't. You seem to be trying to create some sort of moral comment here that I ought to willingly curtail my ability to comment just because somebody else is being horribly obnoxious. I'll go and use a personal. I'll use a personal example right now. That's kind of like giving. I had a comment exchange with Cardinal Virtues. And apparently, he took my position to be something other than what it was.
And he assumes that I support bigotry without understanding what my point is. And I really can't. I mean, I've gone and made my case, and I've sent one message. At this point, it's up to me to leave him alone, because anything more would be an emotional thing.
So let's say...
No, that's... Yeah. Sorry.
I have to say that I think that's first of all, there's no moral absolute or,
I'm not claiming a moral absolute. I'm acknowledging that for most people, if we keep pressing at them, they tend to get more frustrated, and whatever point of reason that we were hoping to get goes out the window.
Oh no, I'm not going to sort of do kind of the sort of like what sounds very similar to the blame the victim dance. I mean,
I'm almost offended by this.
Yeah.
You think that I am somehow implicated in his creation of 14 videos about me?
I doubt he would have persisted with any more videos if y'all had not had continuous exchanges. Does it even seem reasonable that y'all would have this parade of videos if you didn't have the exchange?
You mean if I didn't respond to the assault? I'm entitled to respond to
right.
that. I'm not obligated to take that sort of stuff.
And at a certain point, is the exchange fruitful?
I'm not required to justify my actions as being fruitful.
I know. You're not. I'm asking, in your estimation, is at a certain point, is the claims fruitful? I mean, the exchange fruitful?
I'm not prepared to answer that on the basis that if tomorrow Billsy Bob calls me and we work it out, it will have been fruitful.
Okay. But at the moment, it's been a long, just a chain.
So what?
I'm laying out what seems to be, from my standpoint, a drama moment, because at a certain point, and I'll say it personally.
That's irrelevant to the question of has he been horribly immoral?
Right, and
within the constraints of what he's been trying to say at various points, I won't say he's been horribly immoral. I will say that y'all have had horrible exchanges that's gone out of hand.
You won't say that he's been horribly immoral?
Why wouldn't you say that?
Within the narrow context of what he's defining and how he's defining it, no.
Okay, so that phrase, within the narrow context of what he's defining, blah, 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 means nothing. Okay? Nothing. So, and because it has no meaning, it has no impact on how you would judge whether or not what he has done is a good thing or a bad thing.
Give me your moral adjudication rules.
No. Give me the meaning of that phrase.
The meaning of that phrase.
Not the one you. I mean.
Adjudication rules. What you said?
I said rules because he suggested this moral outcome thing, and my comment is that I'm not even trying to get it there. I'm looking at two people who are having a horrible exchange. He was trying to make a point. His use of language for making the point could be considered egregious. I'll dare say is egregious, definitely from the standpoint of a believer, if no one else.
I have no idea what that means.
Right.
It's egregious from the standpoint.
One feels that a thing is egregious or not depends upon the frame in which you feel offended or harmed or ugly or something with regard to the claims in question.
No. I mean, you just tried to tie belief in God as to whether or not someone's going to find his remarks just completely not on, completely out of bounds. So,
give me his claims in the context in which he's presented them and meant them, to your knowledge.
So, this is just so silly. Look, he's calling people baby murderers and rapists.
Under what provisional title?
No.
It is contingent claim. Continue with it.
What?
His claim of baby murder and everything else is a contingent claim, so what's the rest of his claim?
If you're a Christian?
And what is his definition of a Christian?
No, I mean, like, we're done, right? It's like...
No, you're not done. What is his definition of a Christian?
He doesn't have one.
He presented one.
He has an incoherent one.
And which means that it applies to no one, if that's the case.
Oh, sweet Jesus. That is the dumbest bit of... Oh, sweet Jesus.
My point was that he was defining. In his frustration, hold on. In his frustration with a definition of Christian, he went on and created an abominable one so that people would feel obligated to define something.
But that's smearing Christians.
So wait a minute. So what? If he's frustrated with something in the world, that doesn't entitle him to do things that are horribly immoral.
Right.
Hold.
But it entitles him to do.
You're saying that his definition makes it immoral.
No, his definition is irrelevant to the...
Actually, it is contingent to these claims.
No, it's not, because no matter what that definition is, he's still saying Theowarner is all of these things. Like, everyone he meets who has the slightest disagreement with him, he says, you're a Christian, and a rapist, and a racist, and a baby murderer, and a Nazi, and and on and on and on and on. Irrespective of the definitional games that he plays otherwise.
Gentlemen, we will have a discussion. I'll have a discussion with him about his use of language.
No.
No. Because at
Irrespective.
this moment, everything now is hearsay, in a sense. And I want to hear it directly
No,
from
it's
him.
not. There's a record of it. He's got 14 videos where he does this, and a litany of comments on YouTube. This isn't hearsay.
It is intertwined with a lot of other dialogue. So let's get a clear statement out of him that is not baggage. It has all the baggage of the conversation.
Now
and all this other stuff that's with it. Yes, I'll say baggage.
That would be remarkable.
Okay. So I will ask him to clarify his position as to what he's claiming and present it. And we'll just pick through it piece at a time. And I will look at it from the standpoint of Christians being offended. So I'll take the position of the offended Christian here.
Well, wait. No, we were close there, but it just went off the rails. So.
What does an offended Christian...
I'm going to take the position of being offended by the commentary, looking for clarification.
I don't understand what that means, first of all, but you don't need
Basically,
to do that.
when you're having a discussion with somebody, it would be nice that they actually have a point by which you can actually have a conversation about something.
I mean, are you saying that he
doesn't? If he's having a conversation about his language, I would like to put myself in the position of the person who has been offended and exactly why I'm offended.
This isn't some fine Wittgensteinian point about language.
Do you why I was offended by a video called Theowarner is literally a Nazi?
Assuming that he meant it as literal or hyperbole. At this moment, I don't know.
It's the title of his video.
I know. It's a deliberately provocative title. Is that what he really meant, or is it hyperbole? And that's what we need to ask.
Excuse me, but when you call it hyperbole, it doesn't neuter it of its moral value. It's just what you call the offensive thing.
Right.
And the person who is experiencing is the one who is offended.
It's relevant.
And it is relevant. Because if there's no one that's aggrieved, there's no point. And I take it you are aggrieved by his title, correct?
What I'm really aggrieved by is that he makes videos about me, and when I offer to talk about what's apparently, what we want to talk about or something, what he's talking about in these videos, his response is to just curse at me and try to antagonize. I don't see why that's necessary. I mean, if he's going to continue to make videos that are about Theowarner, right? Then it seems like that is it an act of psychic violence to not then talk to the person when they say, listen, I'd like to talk about that?
Theo, do you find the claims valid against you?
That's irrelevant.
I'm asking a question of Theo. Can you just say whether you find the claims valid or not? Just say it.
I have no idea what you're talking. I mean, which claims? He's made like 150 of them. Some of them actually are pretty spot on, to be honest. Like when he called me a nihilist, I thought that was pretty close to true.
Okay. So we have a combination of some things that are true and some combination of things that are not true.
Well, what I would say is that it's obviously worth a conversation if there's all these claims about me. Let's have a conversation. We can sort it out. Right?
Well, and not just that, but I mean, he aims, like, it's not just aimed at Theo, right? It's aimed at, like, all Christians. And I have to say...
Actually, given the definition that he's using for Christian, I grant that the word is being disparaged. I grant.
Well, hold on.
It's not the word.
So let's move this from, like, a religious group to, like, some other group, right? I mean, let's take, like, an ethnicity, right? I mean, let's say that he was aiming his remarks at Jews. It would be the dumbest thing in the world to then go to a Jew and then ask them, well, do you think these remarks are accurate? It's not the point, right? I mean, the point is it's hateful, vitriolic speech that is unproductive, it's intended to incite, or some other thing. It's not, whether or not, Jews are, have... as a class, actually evidence the thing that's being said. It's just that these remarks are just, like, not on, and they are uncivil, and just that's what's on. Not like, well, is it true?
I mean,
I grant. What I'm getting at is, given that it's a personal attack, it's one of those things where.
Let's just say it's a personal attack, right? I mean, we're not being coy and saying that it's only a personal attack if it's true or something. It's
right.
Notice, I wanted to go ahead and get a clearing of sorts, and I couldn't even get that. Oh, God. It's a menache, and I really hate menache.
It's a what?
It's a dunghill right now of just stuff.
What?
I agree that it is, but you realize that of the two people involved in this conversation, I have put forward an extraordinary amount of effort in trying to work it out, right? I mean, you compare me and Beelzebub, which person has tried the hardest to make these things clear?
Theo?
Yes.
The notion of clarity of what a person is or is not doing is an experiential thing. Remember when I made the comment in our last conversation about getting the feeling that people are lying? I don't have proof, but I feel like they're lying at times. You understand that experience, right?
Sure.
Okay. And whether a person is actually trying or not is an experiential thing in part due to their interpretation of the interactions they've had with the person. So at this moment...
Huh? Go ahead. I think you just need a math perspective.
So I don't know whether from his perspective or not that he feels that there's been any attempt at clarity.
That may be, but I'm not interested in what his perspective is. I'm saying to you, to Mike, to myself, to the audience, and then I suppose to him, I mean, is it really, if you compare my conduct and his conduct over the last couple of months, is it really hard to sit there and say, I wonder which of those two persons are the reasonable ones? Is the reasonable one the one trying to have the discourse? I mean, is that really mysterious to you?
Theo, hold on. Let me share this a little notable.
Yeah.
The phrase passive aggressive, does that mean anything to you?
Yeah.
Okay.
There should be a good way to answer that question. You're like, I don't know. What does it mean to you?
No. I'm not labeling anybody. It's not intended as a label. Yeah, I understand it could be construed that way. I didn't mean it that way.
No, I'm just saying that like he could have been very clever in his answer, right? Like,
does the question "you're a stupid"
exactly mean anything to you?
No. Point taken. I intended that way. Point taken.
That's okay.
Passive-aggressive people have this way of driving some people absolutely insane. I have been guilty of this in my past without realizing that I was driving somebody insane.
So I mean...
And I don't know that the other person understands. Like, I didn't even realize I was doing it to him. It took me a moment and my aunt to explain the junk to me, that what I had done to the person, where they were raving lunatic.
So, but what? Okay.
As a byproduct of what I had done.
Are you saying that Beelzebub is passive aggressive?
No.
Are you saying?
I'm saying Theo can be construed to be that way at times.
Oh, so it actually was an accusation.
It was a possible notion about what could be the interaction.
The good news, Theo, is you have one more chance to use your line, right? I don't know.
I'm going to say that I have wondered whether or not you were doing that to me. Because experientially, I didn't understand at the time that you like to pull apart the meaning beforehand. I did not.
Well,
so the pulling apart was an active feeling of assault.
Let's just back up for a second. Even if I have been passive aggressive, that's a pretty,
I don't ignore emotional realities of people.
It's a pretty. In a way, my response is this. So what? That's nothing.
And that's basically saying emotions are meaningless.
No,
again,
emotions are meaningless.
Actually, when you say "so what" to something that cuts to the heart of why people react in certain ways, it is amount to dismissing emotion here.
No, it's not. It's.
What I'm saying is that. Go ahead, Mike.
So you can acknowledge whatever emotions that would come up there, but still say that you have to behave in a certain adult-like way.
Are you saying that everybody is going to, quote, control themselves the same way?
Yes, I think everybody is duty-bound to control themselves to a certain extent. And that extent, by the way...
At this moment, I will say that I'm with you. I love the notion, but that's not the reality.
It is the reality that they're duty-bound.
Yeah.
Actually...
Duty is a relative...
Duty-bound by what we consider general notions of society, I'll go with that.
Yeah, another way to say that is that it is antisocial to reject your duty to be in comportment with these rules, which is what he did. He was antisocial.
Yes, and there are times when you will... I'm with you, and I will also acknowledge that there are times when the rules are meaningless at that moment.
No.
And I grant that it would be nice that everybody maintain...
how morality works.
Say what?
I don't think you understand how morality works.
Hold on. What notion of morality do you assume that I subscribe to?
Well, I'm not sure, but any moral theory that any moral theory that I can think of would still say that somebody if somebody behaves like Beelzebub has in the past, that it doesn't matter whether he was excited or what was going on in his mind at the moment. What he did, we can evaluate as a moral act. I can't think of a moral theory that
we
gets
could come up with a whole bunch of theories from a lot of different perspectives that would suggest all manner of things. At this moment, don't want to argue the moral theory. I'm speaking to how people are.
Okay,
and to dismiss... Hold hold. On this one, I have to say no.
The word duty is not about how people are. The word duty is about morality.
I'm talking about duty because that is the framework that has been created and ignored regularly in discourse at various points of time. At this moment, it's incredibly important to at least acknowledge how people are, as opposed to dismissing it as being a flight of fancy.
Well, I mean,
if you understand how morality works. So if you have some interest in describing how Beelzebub is, that's fine. Nobody cares. I mean.
Actually, you do at this moment because of his actions.
Okay, all right, you're right. So let's say you care how he is. We've described it rigorously. Good. Now the question is that bad?
Actually, that's not the question. Because in your case, you would like a better interaction. Is that not the case?
I would, but that's not why I'm asking this question. The reason I'm asking...
Actually, again, there's two different frames. There's this thing about this, all these logical linkages that we could get onto, and then I don't know how to describe the concept, but there's a basic interpersonal connection.
Sure. Again,
and you two have no interpersonal connection.
No.
So
I don't. So
hold on.
The only thing that's going to get Beelzebub off the hook
what happens
is like actual mental illness. I mean, that's like the only thing.
Actually, no.
Okay, my context.
But again, there is no time taken to actually understand each other. So all these other things are considered and dismissed that are relevant, as opposed to acknowledging the nature of people.
I've not even heard. So tell us one of these things.
Every environment that one lives has a certain, quote, moral code of conduct within that environment.
Okay.
And the idea that if you're attacked, you respond is a notion that's held in some environments, is it not?
Yes.
Okay. And the notion of attack is also rather undefined, is it not?
It's all this gets down to is what you're going to say here is something like, he was provoked by my passive aggression, and therefore...
I'm not going to even say that he was provoked. I'm going to say that he may have interpreted it as an attack. It could be on either party. Don't know.
The one thing I do want to sort of...
acknowledging that it is an ugly emotional thing more than anything else.
The one thing I do want to point out here is that you've moved in these in the last 10 or 15 minutes.
I've moved
from hold on, I'm not done. From a defense of Beelzebub's ideas and the things that he is saying, to a defense of, I think, his character and his morality. And I mean,
I'm not claiming anything about his character or morality. I'm acknowledging human nature. That's all.
Human nature is character.
You know what I mean, do you not?
No, I do not.
You don't.
I almost never do.
I'm sorry. I apologize that my pedestrian language is not suitable.
Yeah, Theo's passive aggressive.
Oh, yeah, that's right. So passive aggressive by context.
Hey, notice I can't deny it either. I have that too.
So no. Okay, so I'm like not gonna let this pass. But I mean, you're at least doing something other than merely defending his ideas at this point.
At this moment, I'm looking at the exchange as being a protracted one, which tends to make most people unhinged.
But whose fault is that?
And also, I disagree.
At this moment, you could say it's his, you could say it's yours. I don't really care to place blame. I'm acknowledging it as a mess.
So, yeah, which I think is actually pretty cowardly.
Yeah,
why? Is it not true?
It is. Well, it is patently. Well, is what not true?
That this engagement is a mess.
No, that's not what I'm saying. Well, that's not what I'm saying. You know, what I'm saying is that we definitely can, you know, at this point start pointing fingers.
And we could point fingers, but does that solve anything? Does it?
But that's not. Wait, God,
Sure.
you just changed the subject of the question.
Yeah.
I mean, just listen to the question. We said we've got this conversation. It's clearly a mess, and we said, why can't you point fingers in this thing? And then you change the subject to repairing it. That's just not what we're talking about right now. What I'm trying to figure out is, in this conversation, why you, not him, you are incapable of evaluating what's in front of you. It should be, I mean, I'm stunned.
Hold on. I'll go ahead and say what I see in front of me.
Yeah.
We have a bunch of claims. We have a bunch of possibilities about what was intended. We don't have a clear statement of what was actually intended. And we have emotional issues associated with all claims that are on the table.
And I have to say, I think that is willfully blind.
Yeah.
From a perspective, I'll grant you that. From another perspective, it's spot on. Again, this is an interpretive issue, and as you're trying to act as I should or want to be an adjudicator on this, and quite frankly, I don't.
I'm not asking you to be an adjudicator because I will only respect one of your two answers.
Right.
I'm asking you to come to either answer, and I will attempt to convince you that you were right, or I will attempt to convince you that you're wrong, or congratulate you for agreeing with me. I mean, it's a disagreement, but the position that it's too difficult to think about is.
Oh, no. I'm not saying it's too difficult. I don't see a point in it at this point.
I'm sorry?
I don't see an intrinsic point in it.
So it's not a very difficult point to describe, right? I mean, if you're at all concerned about how conversations are conducted, right? I mean, you want to be able to identify those people who are doing it well and who are not doing it well, and those methods of conducting oneself that are constructive and that are not constructive. Those which advance the conversation and those that do not. I know that one disagreement that you and I have is that there's. I mean, I'll state very clearly, there is no way I could possibly describe anything Beelzebub has ever done as being something that he intends to advance a discussion. That's not his business, and you have said that he is. So I mean, those are the kinds of evaluations that we want to have and use and be able to talk about. And he's just wrong. And
the narratives that people present give an indication as to what they think and how they understand it. Is that in dispute, gentlemen?
That's.
Is that in dispute at all?
Lots of this that the sky is blue is not in dispute. I don't know what are you on about?
Okay. Y'all have had a long exchange between you and Beelzebub and Cardinal Virtues, and it has become, from my standpoint, definitely less rational, and about proving somebody the ultimate guy, as opposed to just settling a mess. It's already clear that the claim that he's making only applies to a certain group of people at best, if that.
Well, no, because he keeps qualifying it. He keeps qualifying it to on the one hand exclude everyone, and on the other hand include everyone.
Yeah, when he says, Theowarner, you prayed.
And given the nature of language, can you say that was clearly intended or not?
Yes, it is intended, of course. You would have to be a fool to not sort of be onto his project.
Mike, as well as you are well aware, when you use the hydraulics notion, the counterintuitive things that you'd be aware of regarding fluid dynamics,
yeah.
The idea of whether or not a person is a fool or not is contingent upon what they think they know, correct?
Yeah, stop it. Yeah, it's ridiculous. Come on.
What I'm getting at is, I've acknowledged that my notion of Christianity, in the way that it could be constructed, is anemic to all the definitions that are out there, right? So
again,
that he intended something, and he doesn't actually know all the details about the thing, can you really say that he's informed enough to make the claim?
It doesn't matter if he knows enough about me to actually know that I'm a Nazi.
Right,
That he
yeah,
called
right.
me a Nazi is what he did.
Yes.
Yes, on the basis of the extended notion of obedience to an authority as defined in his notion of Christianity.
So, by context, I just want to be very explicit with this. Your line of reasoning would actually exonerate actual Nazis, right? I mean, they really didn't like the Jews. That's why they killed 6 million of them.
But they didn't know.
They didn't know, right, that they liked gefilte fish, or, you know.
I mean, in my context, if I papered your neighborhood with posters that said, this man is a child rapist, but did so out of ignorance, I would still be causing you great harm, and it would be wrong of me to do it. It doesn't matter that I was trying to make a poetic point, or I was trying to be funny, or whatever. I mean, it was a horribly wrong thing. That would be horribly wrong. I mean, there's no way to take his rhetoric and say that it was suited to a certain kind of discourse.
Right.
There's no kind of discourse.
Are you saying that the conditionals associated with a claim and the context in which the claim is made are pointless, gentlemen?
I'm saying nothing that would require that many syllables.
Right. What I'm saying is that you can factor context, you can factor whatever, and sometimes you get slightly different results, and that's interesting, and you can look at that, but there is no way to do the math in this situation that makes Beelzebub look anything other than this deplorable and overtly obnoxious troll, right?
At this moment, for you, I'll grant you have a point from your perspective.
So, I mean, you've been sort of very frustrated with both Theo's and mine's reluctance to give sort of straight answers to straight questions, even when those questions were sort of ill-formed and meaningless. You know, I'm going to express that frustration with you right now. I mean, my position, you know, this is a very, very like straightforward thing to ask. Yes or no? Is Beelzebub a gigantic fucking asshole or not? And there's only one kind of.
He's definitely an asshole to you guys.
See, that's not a yes. That's not a yes or no answer.
I can't give a yes or no answer because I don't find you to be an asshole in the context in which I'm receiving him. I can't say he's an asshole. So the answer would be no, I do not find him to be an asshole. I do find that his argument and presentation needs some work. I do realize that the argument needs to be less offensive so that people can actually get the point.
Yeah. So,
I mean, like, one thing I do want to sort of say explicitly is that, like, this is the kind of supporter that Beelzebub needs, right? I mean, someone who's willing to go through those kinds of gymnastics.
Yeah. My context, do you realize that in your mind, you're drawing a distinction between what the sort of what do pearls grow in? Clams?
Oysters.
Oysters. You're drawing a distinction between the pearl and the oyster. Like you're saying that inside all that crap, there's this thing that's interesting that we should talk about, right? And it would be better if it came wrapped in a nice felt box than an oyster. And I'm not disagreeing with you. That would be better. It would be better if it was presented civilly. My comment isn't, my objection, my moral comment here isn't that he packaged it poorly. It's that he launched an overwhelmingly vicious attack over the course of all of these videos. That's not talking about the oyster. That's
I'm there, and I'm betting a lot of that became personal. Theo, I don't know whether who you have a what I call an interpersonal with, a nice dialogue with. They actually know what you think, how you feel about it, so that other contextual notions can be had on the basis of what you've actually shared. When a person doesn't share anything, all kinds of horrible things can be made up, all kinds of good things can be made up, but there's nothing there.
I'm not.
For our context.
I don't know what you're saying.
and I just want to emphasize, like, not in like the usual way that I've not known what you're saying, but like, it's like it's not that I don't get the words. It's just like how can you say that?
You don't have to know anything about me other than that I'm saying to you right now, I am not a Nazi, and that's enough.
I hear you're not. From my standpoint, I don't think you're Nazi. I don't. However, if I was trying to bait you into saying what you are, I may say many things trying to get you to claim something.
But it's not relevant. Nothing. That's not.
But hold on. Relevant to you. Relevant to you.
No.
But with regard to the other person, you don't know what's relevant to them.
Do you know that there's this in law this idea that was argued for a while that women who dressed in a certain way shared moral responsibility if they were raped. That idea, thanks to the efforts of feminists, was rejected very, very squarely, and today is actually illegal for defense attorneys of accused rapists to present any information that might even establish that. They're not allowed to discuss those kinds of things.
I'm not arguing, but it should be noted that the common notions
you're not even waiting to understand.
But no, I hear what he's saying. He's right. There's a whole bunch of things that are intrinsically invalid, but that does not preclude people feeling that way. So the phrase "birds of a feather," although it may not be true in a categorical sense of any sense of the word, has a resonance of truth to many people.
So let's take that line of logic back to the rape situation. What you're saying is that while the conduct of the victim is not relevant to establishing the guilt of the rapist, we should point out that the rapist was actually sexually aroused.
Right.
I mean, do you understand how
Say that again? I missed something in that one.
I know.
I think it's the first thing all three of us agree on.
That I didn't do. I was making a comment about the observer notions with regard to whether a person is or is not like somebody else in the group. And I'm speaking to group notions. And then you started talking about the rapist. I wasn't talking about anything singular. I was talking about group notions, common perception.
Okay.
What are you talking about?
You don't need to talk about common perceptions. Nowhere in the entire conversation is there a group of people. One person, Beelzebub, and then there's me, Theowarner.
And I'm saying, from my perspective, there's a whole bunch of things that seem to have gone wrong in this exchange.
Okay. But that's not. It doesn't matter what things have gone wrong in this exchange. We're looking at certain actions that Beelzebub has taken.
When things have gone wrong, people tend to have an emotional outburst against the wrong. And it's not necessarily rational. So why is that not relevant?
It's not a question, because this is why it's not relevant. It doesn't matter if he was frustrated or had an outburst or whatever. It still resulted in an action that was obviously immoral.
Okay, so you're saying that we rate the morality of a thing on the same basis regardless of the person's state of mind?
That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is
that's what you're suggesting.
No, it's not. So
what I'm saying is we can say to ourselves, is what he did wrong? We then
and we can then ask, what was his state of mind at the time he was doing it? Which is relevant, is it not?
Relevant to what? The question of whether it was wrong?
relevant to the nature of what we call wrong in the action and whether or not it was mitigated or not within the scope of mind that the person had at the time that they did whatever.
When you say these sentences, do you know what you're saying? I mean,
actually, I do. The question is whether or not they're coherent enough for you to understand what I'm getting at.
Actually, I still think the question is open as to whether or not you understand them as you say them.
Yeah. So listen, when there's an action, we can evaluate it and say to ourselves, is it an action that is right or wrong? Does any
action happen in a vacuum?
Okay, don't make that jump yet.
Okay.
So that's the first question. Now, it's usually pretty straightforward. Did it cause harm? That kind of thing. We just look at it and just say it, right or wrong. Now, when you talk about mitigating factors are, occasionally can come up and might have some relevance in the question of guilt or innocence. The classic example with murder, for example, is, if I shoot somebody but they are actually already dead, that's a mitigating factor that might factor into what crime I committed, right? But clearly there was a moral action we can talk about. Mitigating factors. Actually, in that case, it depends on whose moral notion. I don't want to talk about that. Okay, go on. When we talk about mitigating factors, 99% of the time, what we're talking about is allocating punishment. In that case, we can talk about this. But we're not a court. We're not going to. At this moment, y'all are having an ongoing verbal dispute with a lot of claims being, on his part, being hurled at you. You're coming up with ambiguous things in terms of response at times. What are my ambiguous things? My ambiguous responses about a month now have been, I want to talk about this face-to-face on Skype. For about a month now. That's all I've said. Okay.
And so, there are kind of two things that I want to bring up here. One is this story that you have, my context, concerning Beelzebub's emotional state and how he's sort of been incited somehow. Just it does not fit with the facts or the history or the state of affairs as we have them. Beelzebub came out swinging on this one. That's swinging in response to what? That's so one. Okay, so that was one. He came swinging, and two. I mean, even if we get through this whole mitigating factor thing, and it somehow comes, is relevant. No, hold on, is relevant in principle. This is an exchange that has happened over 2 months. There's no way he has maintained that level of rage and ire that would actually be something that we could point to as mitigating over that length of time. I mean, this is not a crime of passion. I'll count on that because when I was a lot younger, I did have rage moments that lasted a long time. I really stepped away from people when I did have them. No. Stop it. You don't understand. No. You made a claim about what the possibility was, and I am attesting to the possibility that it could be. No, because that long-term range even at that time would not have been a mitigating circumstance for anything. It would have gone toward, for example, in the criminal stuff, it would have gone toward premeditation. The kinds of things that can mitigate are like when your judgment is so clouded in one particular moment of frenzy that you can't think morally and rationally, and if your contention is that Beelzebub is so weak-minded that the emotions that he has had and can maintain for that length of time actually amount to a mitigation, then I have to ask you, as you asked me, why do you think he's so stupid? I mean, that's really remarkable. Actually, that's not stupid. That's an issue of anger management.
And there are people who have that as an issue. And to keep nudging them is to keep the issue alive.
So what?
Yes.
People who have anger.
And if you wish to dismiss the anger and emotions of people, do it at your own leisure. But it is a reality.
No.
Don't ignore it.
No, this is why I say I don't think you understand how morality works. It
Right.
doesn't matter if he has an anger management.
I'm not claiming any. Well, wait a minute.
Morality doesn't.
When we talk, hold on. When we talk about how people act,
Yeah.
does anybody sit around and consult the rule book as about how they're supposed to act?
Yes, it's called a conscience. It's what you're
Yeah.
supposed to.
Yeah.
And everyone's conscience about whatever it is they do is different, is it not? Yes, we have some commonalities, but we have a lot of divergent areas, do we not?
Our consciences are.
You're trying to make a categorical claim about an individual, which can't be done any more than a categorical claim, as it seems, can be made about Christianity or any number of other terms.
All right.
It's a case-by-case thing, is it not?
No, it is not.
No, in this case, unfortunately, making 14 videos over the course of several months is not covered in the territory of variety among people. That is horrible under anyone's
The average person's statement, probably.
No,
But
the point is that I don't care who did that.
I hear that you don't care. That's understood, but that's not acknowledging the nature of people and persons.
No. Let's say that people are naturally murderous. That doesn't make it good.
Right.
I never said it did.
I'm going to step away
not
for
arguing
a minute
that.
or two, guys. I'll be back in a flash. Continue without me.
So why are you mentioning the
My
nature
commentary is that this has been a protracted thing.
No, answer my question. Why are you even mentioning the nature of people? Like it's relevant.
It is relevant to how people act and respond.
It's relevant in that it's explanatory. It's not relevant in that it's excusatory.
I'm not claiming excuse.
But why are you mentioning it?
I'm mentioning it because the question now becomes to me, why do you wish to maintain this?
But that's
See,
not...
it seems to me the only thing that, from my perspective of value...
Excuse me. That would only be relevant if you were evaluating my moral actions, which you're not. We're evaluating his moral actions.
At this moment, I'm looking at a mess. And both parties, from my standpoint, have been egregious. But for completely different reasons. And I say egregious as in, I forget egregious, because that's a bad word for what's actually happening.
I think it's pretty...
That's a very bad word for what's happening. I'm going to say your persistence and his persistence on this matter that would have been best dropped.
But I'm not guilty of anything here when it comes to persistence. I'm entitled to be persistent as long as I'm not immoral.
You're entitled to be persistent.
Yes, I can be
At
persistent.
at what point is persistence the equivalent of being a soft?
Thing. It just means I'm persistent.
At what point is persistence antagonism? See, my point is how a person experiences these things seem to be dismissed in this exchange that we're having.
So you're right. There's a way that persistence could be considered antagonistic. When I make a point to respond to videos that are about me with a couple of comments, this is not. I mean, it's a video about me. I would be entitled to make a video response to every single one of his videos about me, and I would not be crossing any lines. I'm entitled to that. And I don't make videos about every one of his videos. I don't comment on every single one of his videos. I comment on the majority, and I make videos.
Right.
I make 3 or 4 videos about it. There's no way you could do that math and say.
And I'm gonna ask a weird question.
Sorry.
Yeah.
At the onset of this, when you realized there was a disconnect of some sort,
Okay. I'm not sure what you mean.
What was your notion at that moment of disconnect? Because these are questions I'd like to ask him. The same questions. Don't have him.
What do you mean by a notion of disconnect? I don't know. I mean, the first time
There's
I saw
something in his argument that you found to be abhorrent or wrong or whatever. You proceed to try to address it. There was no redress of the issue from your standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, his first video about me was a fairly rude attack. It had nothing to do with anything I'd said to him. I'd made a video about Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Right.
And he launched into this attack on me. And at the moment...
I think I vaguely remember that.
And
it had something to do with his... Hold on, if I understand correctly, it had something to do with his perceptions of your commentary in the way that you framed it that he found objectionable.
Well, what happened was he didn't know how to use words, so he thought that Theo was calling all atheists stupid.
Actually, that would be you paraphrasing from your perspective. But what was he thinking?
Well...
See,
no, it's not. That's just so fucking weak, dude. That's what he said.
Yeah.
Right? He said Theo is calling all atheists stupid. I mean, I'm all about interpretation, and I will acknowledge that I'm performing an act of interpretation, but I will also say that's a really good interpretation of his remarks.
Okay.
And I can point to the text, and I can show you why it's supported.
I'm going to go with that. I'll go with that. So, when you saw this, from your standpoint, was it reasonable, Theo?
No, it was not reasonable. The video was not reasonable.
Was it worthy of commentary from your standpoint, given your notion of reason?
I don't know what that means.
There's some points that people make that you know is not worth your time to engage. What made it worth your time to engage?
So what my context is doing, Theo, is trying to pin the blame on you.
Yeah, I feel like that's what you're doing, my context. You're trying to say that somehow...
He launched a initial assault against your video. Didn't like it. Responded. His commentary... Hold on. I'll go ahead and make sure that I'm not doing blame the victim. Because there's lots of junk around for everybody.
No, there's not.
He launches at a video that you made, in that he did not find the depiction in it in some fashion right, whatever that fashion is. Yeah. Is that an agreeable notion about your experience, Theo?
Something like that.
Okay. At which point you responded to him about that commentary that he made. Correct?
I think so. Something like that.
And y'all have had an ongoing exchange ever since. Correct?
More or less. I wouldn't say...
Has any of these exchanges, from your standpoint, been fruitful to you?
I mean, some of them have been interesting. I don't know.
I'm asking, have they been productive to you? Would you like to continue these? Are they good to you?
Well,
I'm saying, is this something you wish to continue?
I don't understand, A, the relevance of the question, and B, I don't even quite understand the question.
My commentary is that there are some people that I have dropped my conversation with, and everything just stopped. And that was the end of it.
So what?
Right.
So I did not keep flaming the emotions of that person.
So now I want to say that you've moved from a defense of Beelzebub's ideas to a pragmatic concern.
Yes, I have.
Right. So
I have.
Yeah.
And you failed. And you
my
have.
question about whether or not it was desirable to continue with the state of affairs was a pragmatic concern.
And so you have willfully distorted the moral question and willfully shirked your what I perceive responsibility to make a definite claim on whether or not his behavior has been ethical or not.
In
I mean,
terms
that's
of
that's
I
that's what I'm saying
I
to
normally
you.
don't put ethics down when it comes to the discussions, but let me see, does it amount to that in my mind? Because I really didn't evaluate that properly. Give me a moment. We have him creating videos about you, Theo, which are disparaging videos, some of which is true, some of it is not, from your standpoint, correct?
Let's just say they're all untrue.
They're all untrue.
Yeah, that's good.
So they're categorically untrue. So effectively, you're being, what's the word for that?
Slander.
Slandered. And it's in a public forum that you're being slandered.
Yeah.
And that would be wrong. With the clear-cut slander allegation, that would be wrong.
So,
Assume it wasn't slander. Assuming it is indeed slander, it is wrong.
okay.
But I don't want you to say, assuming that it's slander, is wrong. I want you to be able to say
It's slander.
It is wrong.
At this moment, I'll go ahead and say that the exchange is wrong in the way it's I'll go ahead and say the exchange is wrong.
Say the exchange is wrong. I want you to say that what he has done is wrong.
I can't entirely say that.
Yeah. See, I mean, this is the.
And hold on.
This is why
Hold on. I will give you what you're looking for. I will say that his actions were wrong. Okay, I can say that. My problem is that I'm also considering the motivations, which may feel that were right, but the actions were definitely wrong.
And this is why I'm saying you don't understand morality, because the motivations it's simply a separate question. I get that he was mad. I get that he was frustrated. I get that the way I responded may have even played to his frustrations. You know, he was looking for certain kinds of answers and I refused to give them. I understand that would have made him more frustrated the next time he wanted to launch one of these attacks. That's fine. That none of that is a factor in the question. What he actually did, was it wrong?
I'm going to say that the action was wrong. I can say that clearly. No issue.
Okay.
Yeah, I have concerns of other issues, but I can say that is wrong.
Well,
I cannot divorce the concerns.
that's something.
Anything else that's happened.
Yeah. Now,
but I can say that was wrong.
Good. Good.
Right.
I think that does a bit of work.
That took 3 hours.
Well, but I think that's an advance, actually.
Yeah. Now, as for the rest of it, I guess I want to give you some concessions. As for the rest of it, yeah, you're right. The conversation is a mess. It's a shame that it's gone this way. I think that looking at the way I've conducted myself and the way he's conducted himself, I get that there might have been a better outcome today if I had done things differently. I don't feel that I'm required to be angelic in order to conduct these things. I mean, we can say snippy things to each other. I've said snippy things to you in my context in this conversation, and you said snippy things to me, and
I was an angel,
and Mike said snippy things. And I think that I think of myself as a pretty reasonable person. I think Mike's a pretty reasonable person. I think you're a pretty reasonable person, and I don't see why I should comport myself as if he's a fragile snowflake or a powder keg ready to go off. He stepped to a public forum, made a public comment in a video, and I don't see, and I can be a little curt in responding with him, and play a little, play some little games here and there in some ways, I suppose. None of that is unusual for the public discourse. I mean, it's well within the reach of ordinary rhetoric. I mean, I've seen debates between civilized gentlemen that have crimes far worse than anything I've done in the course of these couple of months, and everybody walked away with handshakes and smiles. So it's the notion that I should have been, extraordinarily sensitive to him, I think is a clever way of twisting this into what's wrong with me when it's obviously what's wrong with me.
My commentary is that when you listen to a person and let me say it another way. We all have what I'll call ugly ways of being at times. Some are more covered than others. And
more covered? You mean more obscure?
More covered, more... I guess the best way to say this is I am sensitive to the realities of other people. And I grant that not everybody is always sensitive. And every once in a while I'll have a slip, but I try not to. I try to be aware of how people can take things. I try. I don't always succeed. But for those who understand more about the nature...
Do you think that everyone ought to be sensitive to the way people are?
If you're trying to make a point, at least for the standpoint of making that point, I would assume that you should in order for them to get that point.
And so, I mean, doesn't that categorical imperative dramatically implicate Billy Bob over me?
At this moment, I dare say you more than him in some of the arguments. And let me say why. You were more aware of the various natures of the arguments that were being attempted. It took me a while before I even understood exactly what he was getting at. And I finally got it. And I presented it at that point. But I realized in our conversation...
I feel like you're simultaneously complimenting me and insulting me. Are you saying that because I'm smart, I should have treated him like he was stupid?
Actually, no.
I mean, are you sure?
Right.
Well, I'll go ahead and let you have your pejorative, and we'll go forward.
I mean, it sounds to me like you're saying...
I'm gonna let you have your pejorative, and we're gonna go forward.
No, there wasn't a pejorative. There was like no... There was...
In the context that we have, it's definitely pejorative. But let's go forward.
No. Pejorative means...
Look, let's go forward. If I were to say something...
Interesting that because I was aware of things like the name... argument from ignorance, argument from confusion or something.
And you knew the details of it, which says that you understood the nature of his argument, where the Achilles of the argument is, whether it has or does not have merits according to the philosophical discussions about the said argument.
Yeah.
Theoretically, you were aware.
So, are you saying that Beelzebub's ignorance is an excuse for his assholishness?
No, I am saying that it provided Theo lots of room to leave it alone or go ahead and illuminate it in a fashion that Bilsey was not able to at the time.
Okay, I disagree with you, and here's why.
Yeah.
In one of my videos, I actually, in a very polite way, explain what the fallacy of oversimplification is. I don't know if you heard it or cared to hear it, but I don't like to be didactic when I talk to people because unlike what you're suggesting I should do, I assume that other people are possessed of the ability to Google stuff.
Right, yeah.
And so, I was just simply presenting this and saying, look, I don't know if you realize this, but this is the fallacy you're committing. It's called the fallacy of oversimplification. I talked about it a little bit, and I engaged the argument to argument. And then at the end of that video, I said, I appreciate this. I'd love to keep talking. and I polite about it. In the comments section, almost everybody said, yes, that's what it's called. You completely explained it correctly, blah, blah, blah. And his response was something like, I don't know, these people, I don't know, he said horrible things, right? I mean, so this idea that...
we're at a point where it's hard to even remember which horrible thing he said in response to that.
Right. So I think this idea that I should, I still quite know what you're saying here. Like, I should take a certain sort of book knowledge and assume that Bilsy Bob doesn't have it when I'm speaking to him.
We had this conversation before about the notion of philosophy versus the masses in our last conversation.
Yeah.
And the arguments that the philosophers make versus what the average person, understands are miles apart, are they not?
I just want to jump in here and say that you think you're defending Bilsy Bob at this point, but
at this moment, I'm acknowledging.
But you're just calling him an idiot, right? I mean, the person who has done more, like.
I'm going to go ahead and say it for myself.
Of Theowarner and my context.
There's a whole realm of things that I am ignorant of.
Well, hold on.
Hold on. I'm going to use me on this because this way we can get away from the pejoratives and attacking other people and what they do or do not understand. I'm going to use me, and there's a whole bunch of things that I know I'm ignorant of.
Let me just get away from those as well, and let me just say, between my context and Theowarner, Theo is the one who has treated Bilsy Bob with more respect. Because, right now, you're sort of making him out to be unable to carry on a conversation. And that's highly insulting.
Hold on. That is the characterization that y'all are putting on it.
No, you put it on him.
Yeah.
He lacks
my commentary is that you were aware of the argument, and he was trying to present it. Articulation versus actual understanding aren't the same.
No, this isn't about articulation. This is about not calling people Nazis, right? I mean,
I agree that his depiction is egregious, but the depiction was not initially anyway, and this is where it got ugly.
No,
it wasn't. To my knowledge, because I don't know all the arguments. To my knowledge, it wasn't initially a personal assault, but a depiction as it related to the claim of Christian, which was an ambiguous term, which he was trying to get some clarity on.
No, the first video was pretty much a personal assault.
Yeah.
I mean, I got messages from people saying, I didn't even know about it for about 2 or 3 days.
Right.
Messages from people saying, this guy is attacking you, do you know about it? And, I mean, I don't have a particularly large following anymore. I've taken great pains to reduce my subscriber base. I used to have, I think it was about 12,000 subscribers.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
And would get, 7, 15, 20,000 views per video, and I would get, hundreds of messages a day that I just couldn't deal with. And it was fine. I mean, I kind of enjoyed it on some level. But, to this day, I still retain a sort of some loyalty among some people, and I really appreciate it. So I was getting these messages from people saying that this guy had made this incredibly nasty video about me. And I watched it, and it was incredibly nasty. I don't see... There was never this, lull of tranquility that was happening or something like that. But I want to go back to what you said in my context. You said something to the effect that there's a difference between the pedestrian and the philosopher. And I acknowledge that difference, but to me, you're describing the problem and not really the solution. I mean, if I, as someone who's relatively ignorant about fluid, what is it, fluid mechanics?
Yes,
whatever,
yes,
right?
yes.
Were to launch a statement in that realm, it wouldn't excuse the fact that I had said everything horribly incorrectly.
No, it wouldn't. But as the person responding,
as a responder, and so Mike Norman, as someone who's much more expert in that field, would be entirely justified in really any response to me. I mean, I'm a dummy pretending to know something. I'm a dummy making arguments, in this field. I don't see. I mean, that's why I don't make arguments about fluid mechanics or whatever. I don't know what I'm talking about.
But if Mike was to respond to the errant claims, he could actually point out something and give reference to how to resolve it, could he not?
That's exactly what Theo did, and this is kind of what really weirds me out about your treatment of this whole thing. Is that you're exactly right. I could be really nice about it. I could lay it out, and I could say, you don't understand this. Here's how we do this thing. Oh, and just say sort of all these things about fluid mechanics, and sort of try to educate, Theo or whomever was hypothetically holding forth. And that's exactly what Theo did, right?
Yeah, as I seem to recall that first response, I said that the argument from hiddenness was fairly well responded to.
Yeah, and then if Theo then turned around and said, "Well, you're a Nazi because fluid dynamicists helped build the V2," then it's Theo's fault, right? And in the exact same case, Theo, he was very. He was kind. He was he did sort of. He almost mollycoddled Beelzebub, and Beelzebub was just an asshole. It really amazes me that you think there's any kind of nuance here. It just really amazes me.
I have not heard all the exchanges, so I am not up to date on every barb that has been exchanged. I'm not. So I grant that my perspective is based in incomplete information.
So when you responded to my comment on Beelzebub's video, had you watched those two videos?
I was watching the video in play, and I asked, what was it that he was saying that was so horrible within the context in which he was trying to say it?
Okay, so you had already watched the first one at that point?
Correct.
Okay.
And I didn't see the perspective. That's why I was asking, because I recognize there is a huge disconnect of perspective understanding. And I was serious when I asked the question.
Well, so no, that's not where I was going. It's just like, you seem sort of quick to distance yourself from even understanding Beelzebub's remarks. Now, I just kind of like, what fraction of his work are you basing your defense on? Have you watched the whole 10, 12, 14 videos?
That is a emotional exchange, and then there is a point of argument, and the two has a lot of intermixing at times, which makes it difficult to talk about.
Right. This is a very numeric question, though. This is like, this is.
Language is never numeric.
No, this one is. It's of the videos that Beelzebub has produced on the subject of Theowarner, how many have you watched in their entirety?
I've watched 3.
Okay.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. So
on actually no, it's 4, because the last one was a 2-parter, so I watched 4.
So,
and quite frankly, I was wishing the drama would die, because the drama is separate from the argument, but the argument has become the drama.
Yeah. So you have the same complaint I do. You just aren't willing to think about it, because you're saying I wish the drama would die. The drama is the crime. That's the crime, that he keeps this unrelenting, what you're calling drama, but I'm going to call just this horrible attack style. You're calling it drama, but there's no drama on my side.
My question at this moment, let's go and use the crime notion. Do we wish to put an end to the crimes?
Every once in a while, I just sort of have to look down at my compass to make sure I know which way is north. So I'm going to do this for the audience here. I want to be clear that Beelzebub's most vocal defender has watched less than a third of the objectionable content.
Hold on. If you'll notice, I have not talked about anything other than the argument for the most part. The rest of it, you notice I have deliberately left off for the most part.
Right,
You know,
but I mean, we're down to like less than a
focused-
third of
I
the
think-
oeuvre.
And notice I couldn't make any specific claims, which says something about my overall knowledge of this. Because from my standpoint, the rest of it is garbage that needs to be ended.
Well,
And I don't see any actual value in the protractedness that we're going through right now, other
So,
than what
make
we
a-
like as a conclusion.
When we end this conversation, make a video and say, Bill Bob, generic God killer, I'm one of your most ardent and vocal defenders. Please knock off the drama so that we can get back to the actual conversation. You are hurting our ability to talk.
That I can do.
Okay. Do that.
it would be awesome. It would be
Okay.
awesome.
And I promise this. I will be there. I will talk. I will, I can do my best to answer these questions. I have to say that he's right. A lot of my beliefs are kind of goofy, and I get that. And that they're not going to, when in that original conversation, when he asked me, do you believe in God, yes or no? And I said, well, my answer is more complex than that. And he said, well, then I don't care. I mean, that's the essence of the problem, is that he wants a yes or a no, and my answer is more complex. And so we'd have to talk through it, and I would do it, and I'd be happy to talk through it with him. I mean, that's the best I can offer. Does that
Okay.
make sense? Does that make sense?
Oh, I understand completely, because there are a lot of notions that are not as black and white as people would like to paint them.
So, and I have to say, I think if you actually do go back and watch the rest of the discussion, you're probably going to have a better understanding of what you perceived as my frustration with you, because you're just going to go, "Holy crap! The guy said this." And I think that sort of largely responsible for most, maybe not all, but like most of sort of the historical blood between us.
Yeah, I mean, I write him a message and say something like, I saw your latest video, I'm not going to respond to it, but if you'd like to talk, let me know. And he writes back, why would I ever want to talk to a fucking liar like you? I mean, how is that? It's a courteous note I'm sending him. It's nothing more than that.
It's an emotional response from my standpoint.
Of course, it's an emotional response.
And, I think the
Rude.
right.
Yeah.
It's iatrogenic, I guess, is sort of the term from the medical field. It's just like it's not a real symptom. It just sort of stems from Beelzebub's interactions with Theo. It's like not, it's just weird.
Nasty.
Anyhow,
No, it's not. Anyhow, I think I don't know. I think that probably about wraps it up, and I think sort of out of.
So, second thing I wanted to talk
Yeah. Out of sympathy for the out of sympathy for the audience.
Yeah.
We're at 2.5 hours in this one, and I think 1.5 on the previous. So a two-parter, folks.
So, Mike, you got to upload this stuff. I want to.
Well, I'll compress the file. You know what? Let's all say goodbye, I guess, and then we can discuss the mechanics.
Okay. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah. Thanks quite a bit. My context. So, yeah, cool. All right, and so that's it. Goodbye, guys.
Goodbye.
Take care.